All right, well, then let's call to order and roll call, please.
Rhonda,
Here.
Castroville,
Here.
County of Monterey,
Here.
Delray Oaks,
Here.
Marina Coast,
Here.
Monterey,
Here.
Pacific Grove, Salinas,
Here.
Sand City, here, Seaside.
Here. Thank you very much. We go to agenda item 3, the Pledge of Allegiance. And could I ask departing City Council, or excuse me, Mayor of Salinas to lead us in the pledge, if she would, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Mayor Craig. We go to agenda item 4, additions to the agenda. Are there, staff, any additions for board members? All right, seeing none, we'll entertain agenda item 5, which is approval of the agenda. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. We have a motion and a second. Anyone from the public wishing to comment on this item? We're up to 3 whole public members. That is awesome. Plus the room. All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? Please show unanimous approval of the agenda. We go to agenda item 6, public comments. Anyone wishing to address the board on matters that do not appear on today's agenda may do so now for not more than 3 minutes. Comments on any other matter listed on the agenda are welcome at the time the matter is being considered by the board. Anyone in the audience, or if you are coming in on Zoom, please use your Zoom hand. All right, seeing none, we get to introduction of a new board member. We'd like to welcome Anthony Rocha from Salinas City Council to join us here at Monterey One Water. So have you had an opportunity to drink from the fire hose yet that I'm sure Mr. Shudo has provided for us?
Would you like me to comment now?
Sure, please, go
I'm
ahead.
very excited to be able to serve on this board, continue the work of our mayor, Kimberly Craig, that she spearheaded during her time on this board. Have served on the Salinas City Council since 2020. Have served as a representative from the city of Salinas to the Groundwater Sustainability Agency since that time as well. Previously served on the school board for the Salinas Union High School District. Excited to bring that skill set to this board and work with all of you on regional water supply solutions.
Well, thank you very much. And I think I probably speak for my fellow directors. Welcome to the board. And I'm sure you'll bring some interesting perspectives. All right, we get to a special acknowledgement, and that is to consider adoption of resolution 2024-02, a resolution of appreciation for Kimberly Craig for her service to Monterey One Water Board, representing the city of Salinas from January 2023 to January 2024. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move the item for approval.
And is there a second? Thank you very much. We have a motion and a second. We'll go out to the public for any comment. All right, seeing none. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Please show unanimous. And let me read the resolution, if I may. It's resolution 2024-02, a resolution of appreciation to Kimberly Craig from the Board of Directors, Monterey One Water. Whereas Monterey One Water acknowledges the service Director Craig has rendered representing the city of Salinas on the Monterey One Water Board of Directors from January 2023 to January 2024. And whereas Director Craig served on the Budget and Personnel Committee from April 2023 to November 2023. And whereas Director Craig utilized her many years in public service to aid her decision-making processes while sitting on the Monterey One Water Board. And whereas the city of Salinas and Monterey One Water have become examples of regional collaboration by using existing infrastructure to capture, store, and reuse unwanted wastewater resources as a new source for recycling. And whereas Director Craig has engaged in analyzing scenarios which could provide more representation for the city's ratepayers, plus how water resources could be evenly distributed for urban and agricultural interests. And whereas all Monterey One Water member entities benefited from Director Craig's dedicated and distinguished service in providing cooperative water solutions for our area. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Monterey One Water hereby commends and extends public recognition and appreciation to Director Craig for her service to Monterey One Water and the communities it served, passed and adopted by the Board of Directors of Monterey One Water this February 26, 2024. If you would come up. Oh, yes.
Thank you.
Hello.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Hello.
Well, we're trying. I'm not sure.
I was gonna say, I don't even need a mic. I'll use my indoor voice. I just want to say thank you. And awkwardly standing, I'm gonna stand over here just so that I can address the board and staff. I just want to say thank you. Very much appreciate the open dialogue that we've had over my last year serving on this board. Very much appreciate the ability to work with multiple people on this board to really sort of steer the ship, not only for the issues that surround Monterey One Water and what we're doing to work as a board, but really the open dialogue, particularly around the weighted vote. Very much appreciate that. City of Salinas has a lot of underrepresented constituents, which means you have a lot of underrepresented ratepayers. And I think through the weighted vote discussion, it gives them a larger voice. So that's all. I'll extend my congratulations to Councilmember Rocha. Certainly continue that discussion if you can, and very much appreciate the time that you allowed me to serve with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have opportunity to.
Thank Mayor Craig for her service, if you'd like to.
Absolutely.
Please,
Yeah.
Vice Chair
I,
Williamson.
I would just share that I appreciated the healthy dialogues that you created on the board. It's always been, I think, something that's needed in this space. And you just jumped right in from day one and provided a different perspective. And I think it was an important part of the experience for the board over the last year. And I think it made a huge difference in regards to how this agency operated. So anyways, for whatever it's worth, I just appreciated the perspective and the energy that you brought to the role, and you'll be missed.
Any other directors? Yes, please. Director
I'd
Avina.
like to thank you as well for your service. I agree with Tyler from day one. Your presence was felt, and I feel like you're always prepared. You were well versed in the topics, and not everybody might have shared your views, but I feel like you always had the people you represent, the ratepayers, on the top of your mind. So I think you're a strong leader, and you will do well in your future endeavors. Thanks.
And Mayor Craig, every once in a while, particularly early on in your tenure, I had the sense that maybe you sometimes felt like you were pushing too hard, or perhaps even giving me some kind of challenge as chair. And I assure you, you were very you contributed a lot, and how shall I put this, enriched the discussions in ways that I think were beneficial to the board. So thank you. All right, if there are no other.
Through the
Oh,
chair.
yes.
Yes, I just wanted to thank Mayor Craig for her time on the board and for her representation that she for her representation for her city of Salinas. So thank you, Mayor Craig.
I also want to make a comment. I want to thank you, Mayor Craig. I'll definitely miss seeing you next next to me here, and us sharing snacks, but
Don't tell.
I definitely think having you here was a learning experience as well. My first year and getting to know the board members was a critical point, and I felt glad that I wasn't the only one here my first year. So thank you for all that you contributed, and thank you for serving the city of Salinas.
Any others? All right, thank you very much. We'll move on to election of board officers. And for that purpose, I'm going to turn this over to Director Church.
Thank you very much. So the nominating committee of myself, Alexis Garcia Rizola, and Nick Smith weighed the candidates we had here to choose from and unanimously selected as our choices Tom Moore as chair and Tyler Williamson as vice chair. So that is our recommendation coming forth. It took us about, I'd say about 45 seconds because there was no other alternative. And it probably I shouldn't have taken that long. Unfortunately, I think Alexis and I left Luke hanging on the line for about 5 minutes waiting for us to get on, which was probably the longest part of the meeting. So this is our slate. And I would, at this point, then open it up to any other nominations for the board chair position. This saw Tyler raise his hand, but I don't.
Sorry,
think-
sorry. That was the wrong time. I shouldn't have done that.
So, see no other nominations? Close that. Is there, should ask for public comment, I think, on each one of these. Is there any public comment? Nobody in the chambers, nobody online. I don't see. So we could bring that up to a close the nominations, put this to a vote. Are those in favor of Tom as chair? Please say aye.
Aye.
Do we don't have anybody online, do we? Do we need to do do you want to do a roll call or do we, okay, just, I know we generally do a roll call, but I usually try to avoid that if we don't have to. And then we would open up for vice chair for Tyler Williamson. Is there any additional nominations? Tyler's not raising his hand this time, so we can close the nominations on that. Any public comment? See no public comment. I'd like to bring it back to a vote. Those in favor of Tyler Williamson, vice chair, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. Back to you, Mr. Chair, for another term.
Thank you very much, Director Church. And I'll try and do justice to the office for the next year. And I'm pretty sure so will Vice Chair Williams. All right, we go to the consent agenda. Are any directors, would you like to pull anything from consent?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to pull item A, the board minutes, since I wasn't here for the last meeting, for a separate vote to abstain on that.
Okay, absolutely. So 10A is pulled from consent. Any others? Anyone from the public wishing to pull anything from consent? All right, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for the consent agenda consisting of 10B through 10H.
Chair, I would entertain approving the consent, including A, but if we could just register that as a no vote or as an abstention.
You can just
for-
register that as an abstention on A and then approve the entire consent.
All right.
That's my
I'll
motion.
entertain a motion to,
Second.
thank you very much. That is your motion, Vice Chair Williamson and Director Carbone. Anyone from the public wishing to comment on the motion? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions other than the one recorded for 10A? Thank you. Show almost unanimous. Is that a technical term, Mr. Gilpin?
It was unanimous
Never
with
mind.
an abstention on A.
The attorney's got to keep us straight. We move on to agenda item 11, which are committee reports, budget and personnel, 11A.
Move approval. Second.
All right. Any discussion? Any comment from the public? All right, we'll bring it back to the board. All in favor of approval of receipt of the minutes, say aye.
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 All opposed? Any abstentions? Please show unanimous approval. We get to agenda item 11B, Recycled Water Committee minutes. Is there a motion to receive? Is
So move.
there a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. Any comments from board members? Any comments from the public? All right, seeing none, bring it back to the board for vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Once again, please show unanimous. That brings us to action item 12A, and I believe Chaitu is going to introduce this.
Good evening, Chair Moore and Directors. Chaito Ibarra, Secretary to the Board. Can everyone hear me? Perfect. So tonight, staff is requesting that you recommend to the full board amending Resolution 2006-24, which is the resolution that outlines the policy for establishment of board committees for our 3 standing committees: Budget Personnel, Recycled Water, and Projects and Planning. The revision that staff is recommending is that we remove the requirement that a weighted vote constitute a quorum on a committee. As way of background, every year after the board chair has been selected, the chair makes committee assignments and follows a policy outlined in Resolution 2006-24. Some of those policy requirements include: the chair shall make reasonable efforts to ensure that participation is shared as equally as possible. The chair will review prior committee assignments along with current member preferences and balance appointments based on member interest, availability, committee experience, and the needs of the agency. The policy also states that in making those appointments, the chair shall ensure that a committee does not constitute a quorum of the board of directors through either the weighted vote or the numerical voting of the board. Aside from Resolution 2006-24, there is no legal requirement to consider weighted votes determining a quorum for committees. California law states that a committee is composed of less than a quorum of the board of directors. In the case of M1W board, less than a quorum of the board would be 5 members or less on a committee. The M1W Joint Exercise of Powers Agreement, Section 3.03, also defines a quorum by members and not weighted votes. Lastly, the Brown Act defines a meeting as a congregation of a majority of the members of a legislative body, irrespective of weighted votes. When the weighted vote is taken into consideration when forming committees, it limits the maximum number of members that can be on each committee. The total weighted vote of the board is 22, and the use of it to determine a quorum restricts the maximum weighted votes on each committee to 11. The weighted votes of the 10-member entities vary between 1 to 6 weighted votes. As an example, if Salinas with 6 weighted votes, Seaside with 3 weighted votes, and Monterey also with 3 weighted votes, all express interest in serving in one committee, the total weighted votes of these 3-member entities would be 12, which under Resolution 2006-24 constitutes a quorum of the board. While a committee cannot take action on behalf of the entire board, they do serve an important function. They are tasked with hearing and studying important information on policies and then making recommendations to the entire 10-member body, just like the Budget Personnel Committee did at their February 9th meeting when they considered this item and voted unanimously to recommend to the full board. In closing, by removing the weighted vote requirement to establishing committees, you could have up to 5 members on each committee. And what lastly is, as we're updating these resolutions, we will be changing the name, which was Monterey Regional Water Pollution Control Agency, to Monterey One Water. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, directors? So just to get it on record, Mr. Gilpin, what is proposed would comply with California law. Is that a true statement?
That is a true statement, Chair Moore.
All right, very good. Any comments from directors? Yes, Director Rocha.
Yeah, I had a short briefing with the general manager, and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to serve on committees as a member that would typically probably not have the opportunity to serve on certain committees depending on the composition of the membership of the committee. So this allows for us to have greater collaboration, discussion on a variety of issues of importance to the agency. So I'll move the item for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. Let's go out to the public, see if the public has anything. Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back and
So one
yes,
comment to add
please.
real quick. I had brought this up in the committee meeting, but there's great value in just kind of extending the comment that Director Rocha had shared in collaboration and the work that's done at the committee level, because it allows, I think, a greater number of, with this change, it allows a greater number of board members to have that kind of pre-discussion before it comes to the full board. And that pre-discussion, I found it to be really beneficial to kind of help tee up the conversation as it comes to the board. So I think that more thoughtful, more intentional discussion with a larger portion of the board, I think is going to bode well for the organization. So.
And I'll just comment that I raised this concern a number of years ago with the then general manager and the then council, and didn't get the impression that we could make any change. It was just, well, that's just what it is. And the concern I had was that created a disincentive for, in particular, our Salinas director to serve on any committees, because then it would force other voices out. So I'm certainly in favor of this, and I'm glad we have a council that has discovered that we didn't have to do it this way all along.
Thank you, Chair.
Dr. Coletti.
It seems that this weighted vote scheme is very much a creature of the agency. What about establishing a quorum for just a board meeting? Would weighted votes be used to establish? I mean, it seems to me the Brown Act is the go-to document on this. So
Yeah, the Brown Act is to go to. You wouldn't use the weighted vote to establish a quorum for a meeting,
including this,
including this meeting.
Okay.
I don't think that's ever, to my knowledge, that's never been done. This was a remnant in terms of establishing the committee makeup. It doesn't control anything other than it was included in there as part of the criteria that the president had to use in establishing the committees.
Yeah, it was just established in a resolution. So as Tom mentioned, when I came on board, it was said, this is how we do it. And certainly I know Ron and Marianne can attest to trying to figure out those committee assignments based on everyone's interest was really difficult. Now, to your point though, Luke, this is a question for Jim. Obviously, 6 people are a quorum. So in terms of discussing, that needs to be followed from a Brown Act perspective, but also from a weighted vote perspective in discussing things outside of the agency business, correct? So for instance, Anthony, Alexis, and Tom couldn't go chat about an item because they represent over 50% of the weighted votes. Like that curveball?
I like the curveball, and I'll
Sorry.
I'm going to call a rain delay.
Which I think is sort of where you were going with this, correct?
Yeah, let me provide that, because I don't think that's accurate in
Okay.
terms of Brown Act discussions, because otherwise that would implicate the committee, because if 3 of them are on a committee, they aren't a quorum for purposes of the board. So why
Correct.
couldn't they talk outside of?
Okay.
So
That's a good
I don't think
clarification,
so,
though.
but let
That's
me
good.
confirm it. Yeah.
So
Appreciate the curveball.
we'll wait for the rain delay and get the information back at a later date.
Right.
Yeah, please do, because even if it's legal, I suspect it might not pass the smell test to less legalistic aspects of the public. So I won't be quickly setting up a meeting with Anthony and 2 more colleagues here to talk about Monterey One Water Board business. All right, so we have a motion on the floor, and we've heard from the public. Ready to vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Please show unanimous approval. Thank you very much. Ms. Ibarra. We get to 12 Bravo. Lyra, are you introducing this one?
That would be me.
Please, thank you very much.
So good evening, Chair Moore and members of the board. I'm Lyra Sampson, the Director of Employee Services, and I'm bringing to you item 12B. It's a really long title, so bear with me. To consider adoption of resolution number 2024-04, amending established salaries classifications and ranges for the management employees bargaining group, executive staff and legal for fiscal years 18-19, 19-20, 20-21, 21-22, and 23-24, thereby superseding and replacing salary classifications and ranges in resolutions numbers 2018-13, 2019-10, 2020-28, 2021-10, 2022-19, and 2023-9. Okay. So a little bit of background on this one. Earlier this month, CalPERS contacted our department to inquire about the salary for the general manager. And they said, well, your salary schedule says it was approved in June, but you didn't report the salary until December. Well, we do our salary schedules in June at the board meeting. However, at the second amendment for the general manager, the board decided to put him on a calendar year. So that doesn't go into effect until the first pay period of the calendar year, whereas the salary schedule was approved in June. So in order to basically fix this error and have it reported correctly to PERS, they're requiring us to go back and amend every single salary schedule since the second amendment, which was that long list that I gave you. And in order to basically have that fix, you just need to put next to it the actual effective date for this new salary. And so in that resolution, all of the new salary schedules that are amended are included. And you'll also notice on the one for fiscal year 23-24, we did add the director of engineering as well as the director of information systems, because those positions, when we approved the salary schedules, we didn't have a salary, we kind of had a range. We've recently filled both positions, which is great. So they said to go ahead and put those on there so we have an actual salary on there that's approved by the board. Okay, now I'm gonna have to read this again. So there's no fiscal impact. Everything is reported correctly as far as the dollars. It's just the date that the salary went into effect that we need to update. So the recommended action is that the Board of Directors adopt resolution number 2024-04, amending established salary classifications and ranges for the management employees bargaining group, executive staff, and legal for fiscal years 2018-19, 2019-20, 2020-21, 2021-22, 2023-24, and thereby superseding and replacing salary classifications and ranges in resolutions number 2018-13, 2019-10, 2020-28, 2021-10, 2022-19, and 2023-09 to add the effective date of the general manager's salary increase for CalPERS reporting purposes. Does anyone have any questions?
Any questions? Thank you very much, Larry. Any questions from directors?
Can you do that again without breathing? Nothing serious.
I'm not going to put you through that. All right. If there are no questions for directors, I'll entertain a motion.
So move.
Is there a second? Thank you very much. We have a motion and a second. We'll go out to the public for comment. All right, seeing none, if there's no more discussion from directors, ready for a vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Please show unanimous approval. Thank you very much. We move on to agenda item 10C. Fred, is that yours?
It is mine. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, board. So tonight, basically, this is the first of two presentations kind of
Could I,
related to the tax.
just a point of clarification
Sure,
as
Director
we
Church. Sure.
go through this. Actually, I meant to raise this when we were looking at the agenda. Why are we doing C before D really outside of, I know that's how letters go, but it seems to me we're looking at approving an opt-out process before we approve a process. And can I just get a little clarification on that?
I'll just do it from a layman's perspective and let Fred and Mike go into detail. It comes down to D is the implementation schedule. So whether the opt-out is there or not affects that schedule and the steps that need to occur, because there's additional steps, as you know. That was the only reason.
Thank you very much.
Back to Fred. Great.
But, oh, unless Jim had something else to add.
Well, I was just gonna say, I think this is a remnant from November when the
Yeah.
board requested that staff look at an opt-out procedure for the placement on the tax roll. So
I think that was October. I wasn't at that meeting, which is
Right.
why I don't have an understanding what's.
Yeah.
in my
right. I
calendar.
think you're right. It was October.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gilpin.
Great.
Fred?
Oh, yeah, thank you very much. So yeah, basically the agenda item tonight is to consider opt-out options relating to placing fees on the tax roll and provide direction to staff. So as kind of was mentioned earlier at the October board meeting, the board did approve us moving forward for placing the wastewater service on the property tax roll. And as part of the motion, staff was directed to investigate a limited term out option that would provide a transition period for customers between bi-monthly billing and billing on the property tax roll. And so we have a little presentation that would kind of walk through if we were to adopt such a program tonight. So basically, kind of to talk about an overview of the program, the idea was if we're going to look at an opt-out option, the idea is it would need to be for a limited term with a one-time enrollment period as far as for number of years it would cover and a maximum number of enrollment as well too.
Fred,
Yeah.
you want to just maybe roll back a little bit for those that may not be familiar with what the opt-out option is?
Sure, absolutely.
And just talk about it 30,000 foot level?
Absolutely, no problem. So the idea was this, there was some concern about, in essence, people not having kind of a transitionary period for us going to the tax roll, that everybody would be placed on the tax roll, because some people thought there would be, in essence, negative effects. So some members of the board expressed an interest in us looking to a way that we could kind of transition people, into going into the tax roll. So the idea, what we would do in essence is for some certain number of people on the program that enrolled in the program, depending on the interest of the board, we would enroll them in basically an ACH option where we would just automatically have their payments withdrawn every month for the period of the opt-out. So in essence, they wouldn't be on the tax roll, but they would get basically just a charge every month for the amount of the sewer bill. Once the opt-out period ended, in essence, then they would go over to the tax roll. The other thing was if they became delinquent or just behind and we weren't able to catch them up, we would also put them on the tax roll as well too. So that's kind of the idea of the opt-out, that there was some interest in the board. The board basically asked us at the October meeting to basically investigate the option and kind of tell them what we thought would be the parameters of the program should the board decide to implement such a program. So the idea is the program would be open to single residential units only on a parcel. So that could be a home, could be a townhome, it could be a condo. It's a home with an ADU, however, would not qualify because those are considered multi-units. If anybody that was enrolled in the program would be required to enroll in the auto pay through our ACH, which is basically an automated clearinghouse withdrawal, we would have a one-time enrollment period for such a program from the period from April through May. The reason why is because we have a very limited time frame in order for us to get everything on the tax roll. So especially this first year as we're implementing stuff, we have to kind of do it on a condensed schedule. So it would need to be basically over a 2-month period. One of the things the board asked us to kind of take a look at was, when other people looked at the programs in the past, what was a reasonable number to kind of cap it at? Because obviously there's an impact to staff on enrolling in such a program. So we basically thought about 3% of our basically base, or about 2,000 people, would be a reasonable number for us to handle and process over a 2-month period. As I mentioned before, if people become delinquent, they would be assessed late fees like we do before with our current billings. They could be subject to liens. And if we can't get them current, they would basically be removed from the program and placed on the tax roll. Next slide. So this kind of gives the board an idea of basically we looked at, in essence, 3 different options. And we talked about this with BPC back in January. Basically, the program, should the board decide to adopt it, could be over 1, 2, or 3-year period. There is a very significant impact to staff of basically, implementing such a program. As you can see, even if you just did it for 1 year, it's almost going to take staff to process the 2,000 applications about 1,600 hours. I mean, that's a substantial investment in staff time. Obviously, the further along you have the program, the additional amount of staff time would be involved in implementing it. There is a significant cost to the program itself, depending on whether it's for 1, 2, or 3 years. For 1 year would cost the entity about $173,000 to implement. If it was for a 3-year period, it's about $458,000. Now that fee there is a small admin fee savings from not placing those on the tax roll. These amounts are netted out, but there is other substantial costs that we would be incurring. A lot of it is staff time. So if we were to basically assess a fee for such a program per person, the cost would be for a 1-year opt-out period, $87. If the board actually went up to a 3-year period, it would be $229. Next slide.
But that 229 would represent like $76 per year. So for the individual, it's less per year.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And they'd pay that fee up front, basically the first year. Oh, yeah, next slide. Thanks, Jack. So in essence, that cost, the key thing, it can't be funded from, in essence, just the regular fee revenue, because it only benefits a limited number of our customers that would be, apply to enroll in the program. So there's really only 2 ways to fund those costs. And this is something we had a discussion with BPC back in January as well, too. So you can either fund it from what's called non-fee reserves. This, in essence, for us, the bulk of it is basically penalties. We had about $900,000 of non-fee revenues primarily from penalties last fiscal year. So we could fund even up to a 3-year program with those reserves without any impact to the customer assistance program. Or if we wanted to basically leave those reserves in place, obviously to fund future capital improvements, we could look to establish an enrollment fee. This would require basically a mailed customer notice, public notices in the newspaper, and a public hearing as well, too. And we'd have to bring this back, to the board for those items. I mean, the fee couldn't just be implemented tonight. And the key thing to note, this is in addition to the steps we're going to talk about in the next staff report about actually placing the wastewater fees in the tax roll.
And Fred, if I may add one thing here, just for clarity, whether it's opt-out or not, the customer assistance program that we've all talked about and like made more robust will continue to move forward. And you'll see that in the next presentation, but I just want to make sure that you knew that they weren't mutually exclusive.
Right. Yeah, thanks, Jay. So basically, we are asking the board to consider the opt-out options that are listed in the slide and as part of your recommendation in the report related to placing fees on the tax roll and provide direction to the staff on the following. The first one, whether or not an opt-out program should actually be established, if the board directs us to establish such a program, for what period, either a 1, 2, or 3-year period. Number 2, if the board approves establishing such a program, how the opt-out program should be funded, either like I mentioned before, through the use of non-fee reserves or basically establishing an enrollment fee. And then the third part, if a fee is to be established for the program, direct staff to hold public hearings at future board meetings for the establishment of the fee in accordance with State Proposition 218. And before I open it up for the board, I don't know, Paul or Jim, if you guys had any additional comments as well.
I think you've clarified it there at the end. This is, if you include this as a fee, it's going to trigger a new 218 hearing relative to our rates and fees. So separate and apart from the public hearings we would have to post on the tax rolls.
All right, questions from directors? Director Church.
Yeah, I'm sort of in a difficult position because I wasn't here in the October meeting, and I was still recovering from a fairly significant injury at that point. So I don't know the discussion that went on to where we got to this point. I know, so I'm going to have to ask a little bit, going back a little bit, and I don't want to bog the board down on this discussion in particular, but I know we did a lot of outreach into to the communities. Is this when the feedback was given back to the board about about those community meetings, or did we ever get any feedback?
You did receive feedback. Staff came up with some of the statistics of how many people attended, how many people didn't like this, et cetera, et cetera. Based on that, certain board members wanted to provide an opportunity for ratepayers to opt out of going to tax rolls and just getting that bill or making that payment on a monthly basis
And
to
that was in
us.
October, I assume, probably when that discussion went on.
Yeah, that was October.
Okay, that's why I'm a little fuzzy on those details. Explains that. So I'm really having the first time really to look at this. I'm loaded down with a whole lot of questions. I mean, I'm not understanding, exactly the why we're putting a time onto here. I mean, there's the fees. I don't like the costs. I mean, there's both sides here. I have real serious questions on, and I'm not sure why we're capping something at 2,000 either. If we're trying to give people an option of to guide people in, it's sort of a first come, first serve. Is you don't make that 2,000, then well, you don't get the comfort zone of floating in. But I understand the high costs involved in here, and that most people may not jump in anyway. So I'm on this particular item, sort of in a difficult position that I don't think I can vote for it right now, and I don't really feel I can vote against it just because I don't think I've had all my questions answered. So on this particular one, and this is really unfortunate because I think this is really an important issue we're coming up. I'm probably going to have to abstain, but I appreciate the effort and the diligence that's gone on to this.
I did want to address the cap you were wondering about. So we basically did some surveys, the underground water district, I think the Salinas Underground Water District, basically here, they transitioned to go into the tax roll. And basically it found that they had about 3%, of their base, in essence, that they provide an opt-out option. So we thought, given that was a reasonable basis, we actually talked about that with the board, and they seemed, okay with us kind of proceeding with that manner. That's how that came out.
And wasn't it also 3CE does the same thing? Or was that?
I don't.
Pardon me? A little different.
Yeah.
But Supervisor Church, regardless of which way this goes, we can certainly meet and go over those questions so you have a greater understanding for when your constituents ask about it one way or the other.
I know there was a lot of apprehension out in the public, as what I'd gathered previously, and I still have my concerns is whether it appears we're putting something forth, which I think is generally a good idea, but where they're putting something forth that people really feel like we're just sort of ramming down them. And I as a public agency, I don't like that kind of top-down feeling, and I'm just not comfortable at this point. But anyway, thank you.
Other directors? Go ahead. Director Rocha.
Thank you. I appreciate your contributions to the creation of this project. Is the reason why the fee is going to be levied in order to pay for the automated clearinghouse program? Is that one of the main reasons for the fee?
Yeah, so just to back up a little bit, the ability to go on the county tax rolls with other fees and such, it saves the agency, frankly, a fair amount of money. And so we realize some of those savings and it goes back into our budget to say, in this instance, 97% are going on the tax rolls, but the 3% we need to maintain billing for them. It does take our customer service staff an amount of time. There's a spreadsheet on the agenda item that shows approximately how much time and costs are associated with that additional 3% or 2,000 accounts. And we just tried to match that so there's not a gift of public funds between different customer classes. So, and that's how Fred and staff came up with there's probably some economy of scale over a 3-year period. That's why it goes from, whatever it was, $82 to $78 to $76 over that 3-year time frame.
And just for context, is it the reason we moved away from the internal billing system because it was overwhelming the internal billing system? Was that one of the reasons?
No, we've actually been obviously doing internal billing the entire duration of the agency. This is just a much more efficient way for a public entity to leverage another public entity and something that they're already doing. So we're just looking at ways that the agency can be more efficient and reduce costs for all of our customers. Another positive is the delinquency rate to county tax rolls is far less than us. So you heard Fred say, if I'm not mistaken, about $900,000 in reserves for non-fee revenues, much of that are delinquent payments or lien payments. So we hope to reduce that as well. So there's a number of positives, certainly just to be more open about it. How many meetings did we have? 10, 20, something like that. During all the public meetings we had, there was some concern, as Supervisor Church identified, going, we've always paid our bill that we receive in the mail. We don't want it on the tax rolls. We want to know what we're paying you. So there is concerns that way as well that we need to acknowledge. And I think if and when we get to the next presentation on item D, you'll see that implementation plan, further community outreach beyond what we've already done, as well as a customer assistance program to try to address some of the financial impacts to our customers.
Thank you for that. Considering it's going to be potentially capped at 3% of the overall base, would it be cost effective to continue using our internal billing system as opposed to going to the clearinghouse?
No, it wouldn't. So that the 2,000 people we were basing it on, instead of having parallel billing systems like we currently have, plus the tax rolls, this just sort of streamlines it to go to the ACH process.
Which would be more cost effective than the internal billing system.
Yeah, and we could do the internal billing, but I'm assuming it would be far greater expense
It would.
for the small number of customers that we're anticipating.
Do you know what would go into that would drive the cost up for the internal billing system?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, so for us to maintain the internal billing system for that 3% piece, what would drive up the cost for it to be significantly higher than going to the clearinghouse?
So what happens is, in order for us to maintain the billing system, we have to maintain support with the vendor basically. And it's a very significant cost. I think it's like over, 100, probably I think about at least $150,000 a year, basically, that we pay between support and printing and everything and the collection services and stuff like that. So some of the printing and collection costs obviously would go down because we'd have a lesser number, but the support costs don't. It doesn't matter if we have one customer or 100, they pretty much, or 100,000, I should say, it stays pretty similar. So
Understood. And a segue from that is, why is the eligibility for the opt-out program limited to single family homes and not including multifamily?
The main reason why is because for ease of use for staff in particular, because in essence, if we just limit it to one home on one parcel. So the way our rates work, it doesn't matter for residential, if you're a condo, if you're, a townhome or a single family, they all pay the same rate. So for us, it'd be very easy to just set up the same rate for everybody. If we're opening it up to like different types of business and stuff, the complications go, tremendously. And it goes back to the earlier idea of, we pretty much have a very condensed time frame to implement such a program. So we want to basically minimize the chance for error. So we thought, let's keep it to the base where we thought would be in the most benefit for customers, which we thought would be the residential side.
When this came before the city council for Salinas, one of the concerns I had with it going to the property tax side of it as opposed to the billing was the potential for landlords to increase the cost of rent for their tenants. I think there's some limitations in their ability to do that as it relates to multifamily residents. There's more protection there from price gouging due to Costa-Hawkins and the way that law applies. But that same protection is not extended to tenants in single family homes, since they're not able to benefit from any kind of rent stabilization policy. So with that understanding, are you taking into consideration income status as part of the opt-out program? Because that was one of my concerns. I didn't want a tenant to have their rent increase dramatically due to this change. Is that going to be a consideration at all?
So when we talked about it with BPC, it definitely is for our customer assistance program, which we're going to be talking about more in the implementation plan for the next item. But for this one, we kind of discussed it with BPC, and they gave us the direction, basically just kind of almost first come, first serve. So, whoever comes in and is able to apply for it. Also, again, it goes back to the limited time frame for us trying to implement this, is that, we wanted to get something up and going, that we thought would benefit. And just in talking with BPC, it seemed like they were okay with just having it be a first come, first serve rather than an income-based program.
So if I may, Anthony, so this does not address price gouging on a single family rental. However, what we have done is restructure the customer assistance program to be open to renters. So someone who is in that income bracket or complies with the PGE cares would be eligible for our customer assistance program, which we'll get into. So that's a little change that we tried to do based on hearing from the board as well as customers on making those funds more available than they currently are.
Understood. Thank you. And just a few more questions, if that's okay. Since it's a one-time opt-out program, is the consideration for making a multi-year program because not everyone is going to opt in that first year, so you want to provide the leeway for those that didn't to consider opting out in the subsequent years? Or what is the reason for a multi-year consideration for the program?
What we heard from the board is they wanted to look at multi-years just to give a longer runway, if you will, for those people that are uncomfortable with going to tax rolls, that they have some time to get used to it prior to shifting. Now, I don't know what else we heard out there about the length of the opt-out.
I mean, yeah, it was the idea was that the reason why we went between 1 to 3 years was we did hear some feedback that just based upon kind of what we heard from BPC, 1 might not be enough. You know, it seemed like initially when we discussed it at BPC, if we were going to go into such a program, the initial thought was it might be maybe 2 years, but we wanted to just give a range of 1 to 3 years, you know, for the board to consider, at least for them to know the cost. It seemed like the BPC was pretty unanimous saying, if we're going to do such a program, the maximum would be 3 years, because at that point we really should have everybody on the tax roll. And really, when we've, there's a number of our surrounding entities that have been on the tax roll, that collect sewer fees for many, many years. Just to give you an example, Delta Diablo, Dublin Services District, Central Sanitary District are just 3 in the Bay Area, and part of Santa Cruz, the sanitation district as well too. And they've had it for many years. It's worked very well for them. But that's the reason why they wanted to potentially have different options available before they made a decision.
Thank you for that. The one thing that I want to put out as a potential option to pursue a multi-year plan is the first year, if we want to pursue the first come first serve, but then for the subsequent years, if possible, we could create a criteria that allows it to be based on low income qualifications for customers to make that transition. The reason I bring that up, and I can only speak for my city in terms of the concerns that I heard, was from low income tenants who are scared about what this change in billing would mean for them as it relates to how their prices of rent would be changed. So is that something that the agency would be open to?
I think probably for a clarification is necessary, because my understanding of how this is written, you would have to opt in the first year.
Yes.
So there would be no
Oh,
opportunity.
understood.
And really,
Yeah.
the opt-in is really, or opt-out is a misnomer from my perspective. This is really a phase-in program. So people would either phase into the tax roll system either over 1, 2, or 3 years as they've proposed it. So if you didn't elect it the first year, you're not going to have an opportunity the second or third year.
And if you don't opt in to opt out.
Yeah, if you don't opt in to opt out. Yes, thank you. Thank you.
And just to follow up with Jim as well too, the idea is, if they didn't do it the first year, we'd have to put it on the tax roll. So it really wouldn't make a lot of sense to put it on the tax roll and then take them off in a subsequent year. That's why it's kind of exactly like Jim was saying, it's really it's a phase in kind of option.
Understood. And my next question might touch on the next agenda item. So if I'm out of line, please let me know, General Counsel. So the enrollment fee says that there are additional steps for implementation to placing it on the tax roll, which would require the individual member agencies to put it on a vote. That would require, I believe, a 2/3 majority of those individual agencies. Do you think we have enough time to meet that deadline with these additional steps?
We certainly think so. It's a tight schedule. Absolutely. Staff has met with staff at the various cities at Salinas, Seaside County Sanitation, Monterey, and Pacific Grove already. So that's in the works to get it to the respective councils and boards. And you'll see the schedule later, but it's tight, but it's doable.
Does it have to be approved by March of 2024 for those respective agencies?
No, so it is basically, so the idea is, I mean, we basically have told the agencies at our meetings that they need to approve it at a June meeting. And I mean, and we'll go through more details when we talk about the tax plan, basically.
It's saying June, yeah.
Okay.
There is a little flexibility, potentially could go to July, but we'd rather have it done in June. So that's why we told everybody June.
And if we chose a non-wastewater fee reserves, we wouldn't have to go through that process with those additional steps.
Oh, as far as the opt-out, yes, right, yeah.
We would not have to go through a Prop 218 to establish a fee for people to pay that.
Okay.
That's correct.
Which that timeline would then be removed.
Correct.
Understood. Just in some comments, I would support the creation of an opt-out program and using the non-wastewater fee reserve, since it would not have an impact to the customer assistance program. And I think that it would be an easier timeline to meet. I also have concerns about the enrollment fee and whether or not low-income tenants are going to be able to pay that fee. If it's a multi-year program, the fee goes up even more. I think it's $87 for the first year and then goes up, significantly higher the subsequent years. So I think to some degree, as it relates to my community, it kind of defeats the purpose of the program, because the program was supposed to reduce barriers and reduce burden. So if it's a fee that is significant, then it really defeats the purpose of the opt-out program. So that's what I would support, the non-wastewater fee reserves. Thank you.
Other directors, Director Ragsdale Cronin.
Thank you. So I know I'm new on this board, but I was on the Del Rio City Council when this was brought to us. And I've heard a lot of comments, read a lot of comments on Nextdoor. They've burned us in effigy and a few other places. I can't wrap my head around the angst about doing this. I own 2 rental properties. I pay the sewer bill. I'm not allowing my tenants to put my house at risk for a lien as we go forward. I don't think the rates are going up in this process, the way I understand it. So I don't know who's going to pass any money down the line. If tenants in Salinas are paying their wastewater bill and then it's going to go on the tax rolls, they're not going to be paying a wastewater bill anymore. That would go away. If the landlord or the owner is not passing that fee on currently, he needs a new accountant if they're paying it. If they're allowing the tenants to pay it, then again, it goes away and the landlord picks it up. You're just kicking the can down the road for 1, 2, or 3 years, because eventually it's going to happen. And I just don't see the need, at least from my perspective, both as a director, city council person, and landlord, to shuffle the can down the road. I mean, rent's what it is. I mean, it's too high around here. We all know that, but that's the way it is. And I doubt there are very few renters directly paying their wastewater bills. The other question I have is, would this implement, and I'm assuming it would, that there wouldn't be a supplemental tax bill coming in. We would go in getting our first bite at the apple in December, and in I think it's December and April.
The critical thing
Yes.
for us, go ahead, Paul.
I'm just going to say on the schedule that you'll see later is we will, if this is approved, we will upload the data to the county in August in being on that tax rolls in December. Great.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry,
no,
Fred.
August 10th. It has to be in by August 10th. So we've designed the schedule to basically, meet the county's required deadlines. And should the board tonight approve the tax plan, we're going to be working with them to set up separate tax codes as well for them. So.
Other directors, Director Habino.
Fred, you mentioned another utility that's how you got the 3%.
Yeah, the Salinas, I think it's called the Salinas Underground. Oh, thank you. Thank
The
you.
GSA.
Yeah.
Do they have a sunset as well? As well as 3CE?
I
Do they have?
don't know if they do or not. Yeah.
I don't think there's a sunset on the GSA.
So, and then my next question is before we were talking about this last year was there was a third party, to help people pay into, is that still in the works? I mean, is that something that can happen? Like people, because I think from what I heard from the public is, from some of the people, is being on the tax roll, it happens in the fall, which could be a hard time of year to hit these people. So there was a third party come company that, can you explain?
So yeah, the
What's that again?
county contracted with Easy Smart Pay, which would allow people to pay their tax bills on a monthly basis if they would like. Is that what you're referencing?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
so
Yeah,
we'll get into
and
that.
yeah, and basically how it works, they can set up their payments in one of two ways. They would be monthly payments. If they said, so we talked about earlier with our opt-out program through an ACH. So they have a similar option. If they set up as an ACH payment through Easy Pay, Smart Pay, there's no fee for the customer. If they use our credit card, then they use a credit, they do assess a credit card fee on that. So, but yeah, and it's on the county's website right now. In fact, we encourage people to use it because obviously if you have a higher property tax bill, kind of helps to spread the load, over the year.
Vice Chair Williamson, if you're done, Director Rubino.
I just want to do a check-in with you to see, is the goal at this point to provide comment too, or do we want to take it out to the public before we continue dialogue? I don't have any questions. I just have comments, but I just want to make sure that just for a point of order.
Yeah, I was mostly looking for questions at this point, and then we can go out to the public, and then we can bring it back for debate. So if there are no more questions, we'll go out to the public. Seeing no one in the room, anxious to jump up to the podium. So we have a hand up, please, Chai.
We're going to hear from Susan Scavone. Go ahead, Ms. Scavone.
Good evening, everybody. I just have questions about this because of the fee being levied on people to opt out. As it goes up, it becomes, if it's $178 a year, that's an extra $15 a month almost. How is that? Can you say more about that? Explain that a little better to me. I get it that this is a herding technique, it seems, and there's some sort of punitiveness involved in having people pay their way into this because they can't get into the tax roll or don't want to. They're going to have to pay a fee in order to not do that, it sounds like. So I'm assuming there's going to be some feedback from people on that if that's what you're proposing. I'd like a little more clarity on that. And from what I'm understanding, you're trying to get everybody on the tax roll within whatever this period of time you've decided to do this opt-in, opt-out program. It concerns me only because it's adding another layer of charges onto the fee. And if somebody's concerned about being on the tax rolls because of the amount, I think there's a lot of education that's going to need to be done for consumers in terms of their ability to maneuver this process and do it in a way that's going to be affordable for them. That's my concern. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other members of the public? If you wish to comment, raise your Zoom hand. All right, seeing none, let's bring it back to the board. I know I'll have some comments, but Vice Chair Williamson, then we'll go to Director Rocha.
Yep. So I have a few things and just bear with me here. I think the biggest question that we have in regards to whether or not we move forward with, if we decide to move forward with the tax roll, the opt-out option. One is we charge customers an enrollment fee, and that puts us in a weird situation that would end up causing the customers to pay more. Susan just spoke to that. The alternative is using non-wastewater fee reserves, which I would be more inclined to use those fees reserves to increase funding for the customer assistance program. So I should have started my comments by saying that I think we should not waste our time pursuing an opt-out option. The cost could be higher than the $87 that was discussed, depending on how many folks we let in. And so let's say we're making this assumption based off of the 2,000 customers and we end up getting more, that's going to cost the agency more funding. In regards to the customer assistance program, by folks transitioning to the customer assistance program, it actually allows them to take advantage, folks enrolling in the tax roll payment as opposed to staying in the monthly billing. It allows folks to have more flexibility in their participation in the customer assistance program. And I think staff will get into that more in the next presentation. I'm just a believer in kind of ripping the Band-Aid off to the point of kicking the can down the road. And eventually it seems like one of the solutions that we come up with is everybody's going to be on the tax roll. And I just don't see the value in the question I have is what does creating that transition for somebody look like? Like, what does that do? What are we doing for anybody? I don't see where that is. And I'm really eagerly interested in hearing from folks that are interested in continuing to push this forward because I'm not seeing the value in it. When I look at this, I'm looking at the impact to the staff and the agency. And so these are some of the things that I see. We're looking at getting the expansion online, which is a huge lift for us. We're looking at the weighted vote. We're having that discussion that's taking up a lot of staff's capacity. We're making this huge transition to the tax rolls. And to me, in and of by itself, there's a lot of error that could happen there. And so I think to make this as easy as possible for the agency to be set up for success in regards to how this huge part of how we function and operate happens, it's important to just make this as easy as possible. We're going through labor negotiations. We need to prep for the presentation next year on increasing fees over the next half decade. These are huge things. None of these things are small. And we're just going to add something else on, which again, I don't see the value out of that. When I listened to the concerns that I heard in regards to folks that wanted to maintain the opt-out, one of the concerns, the biggest concern that I heard was concern around the idea of their fees being increased, as has been iterated tonight. And I think will be continued to be communicated. There's no increase in fees. I mean, unless we decide to do that, there's no discussion of increasing fees with this process. So I think the real concern that I heard from folks is not really a concern. And then also what I heard from folks was that they didn't want it on the tax roll. The reason why they didn't want it on the tax rolls was to have control over their payments. Well, it looks like what we're proposing here is they're going to be on auto pay. They're not going to be able to control the payment. It's going to come directly out of their accounts. So there's that loss of control. And then if we do make it, this is my last comment here. If we do go the route of non-wastewater fee reserve, there's going to be in June, there's going to be an auto pull of that fee. And then in July, there's going to be the first auto pay for rates. I mean, it's just such a messy situation. And I just kind of feel, let's just make this a nice, smooth transition. Let's get to the conversation around the tax rolls. Let's have that. And let's have staff move forward with making this agency successful and move on from this whole discussion around the opt-out option. So,
all right, Director Rocha, followed by Director Coletti.
Thank you. I certainly understand both sides of the discussion. What I'll share in terms of what I believe the benefit to be of this program is that there, at least in my city, I can't speak for every jurisdiction, was a lot of pushback on doing this. And in terms of trying to govern in a manner that is understanding and respectful of constituent concerns, I believe that this option was presented to make sure that the transition process was one that provided consumers an option on how to proceed. Ultimately would contribute to greater buy-in from the public on the program. I think everyone recognizes that, especially as it's communicated through the program, that this is temporary. You're not going to be able to be free of joining the program. At some point, you will have to join the program. But having an opt-out option will allow people to make that transition process themselves. I can only speak about my community in saying that the concern that I have is that right now, tenants are making that payment themselves. Should this be shifted to one that their landlord is going to make, I would hope that more landlords would take the route of Director Cronin and saying that this is the purpose of me being a landlord. You should not have to pay that yourself. I hope that would be what most landlords would do. I don't think that that's going to happen. I think a lot of landlords, especially ones that are not limited in their ability to raise rents, are going to say, you know what, the cost of being a landlord is a lot more expensive. These new fees are coming in, and you know what, we're going to levy this on you and increase your rents. So to some degree, the purpose of this is for the tenant to be able to say, I'm going to pay this so my landlord can't then decide, oh, I'm going to levy this on you. And on top of that, 5% more because I had to do it. So it takes that element out of it and gives the tenant the ability to do that. But ultimately, from as I understand, the intent of it was to provide an option to create greater buy-in into the program. But I understand the other elements that I don't think were fully contemplated as this was put forward as a consideration. And it is a lot of staff time and it is an expense, but I think that it's one that I think it is worthwhile pursuing, at least in the short term, obviously recognizing that this is an inevitable change that has to happen for the organization. But providing options for consumers, I think, is always a good thing. And hopefully this transition process will create more buy-in for the overall transition. But yeah, I understand where everyone's coming from.
Thank you, Director Rocha. Director Coletti.
Thank you, Chair. Question, how much does a Prop 218 protest vote typically cost? And I wasn't fully aware that we would even require a Prop 218 just to establish a new fee.
Are you, just point of clarification, are you asking how much does one vote cost or how much
No,
does
the
the Prop
process.
218 process cost us?
Yeah.
So
To
yeah,
Send it out to the voters for a prop, you got to notice them all. We've got everyone's got to get a mail, a
Right, so-
mailer of some kind.
you're absolutely right. It's expensive.
Yeah.
Fred, I don't know if you have numbers off the top of your head, but we're sending mailers out to 63,000 people, let alone all the other outreach we do. So
It's about 60,000, if I remember right, from the last mailing that we did.
Yeah.
Might be a little bit less, but just it's ballpark.
Well,
less.
Oh,
Okay.
is it? Okay. Thank you.
Closer to 30,000 is what Rachel's saying
Oh,
from
I
last
believe it's in
time.
the postcards, right?
But Luke, to the point, it's not our wastewater fees, obviously. It is just the fee for this opt-out program if
Yes.
the board decides to go that way.
Understood. Yeah, I appreciate the council's talking about it being a transition fee, and that helped clarify as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one additional clarification relative to the consumers, because on the opt-out, the only people who are going to be entitled to opt out are the landowners / landlords. So relative to this, an apartment building, the landlord could opt out and then pay that fee, but you're still going to have the situation where the landlord is making the decision on how to handle that with the tenants. So I just want to clarify that.
Point of clarification. I thought we earlier had identified that renters could participate in the program as well.
The renters, sorry if I misspoke, can participate in the customer assistance program.
Understood.
And that was, we heard much of what
Yeah.
you were saying in terms of the issues that the community had. And so we thought, let's try to address the concerns with an enhanced customer assistance program.
Okay.
And so that's the difference here.
Could I add a point of
Go ahead.
clarification on that as well? Right. So to that point, if the landlord chooses not to transition, right, then the renter won't be able to participate in the more flexible customer assistance program that's available. Whereas, because how the current customer assistance program works for the billing is you have to, if you're paying it, you have to sign up and then you get a certain number of months, 2 months.
It's going to go to 4.
It's going to
the-
4.
the
So,
recent
right,
change.
so you're limited to 2. And that's only if you're paying it. If your landlord's paying it, you don't qualify for it. Versus transitioning to the tax rules, it allows any tenant to get direct check in the mail for that, and it covers it for 4 months.
Yeah, and we'll talk about this in the next item, but it's going to be a 2-part process because the renter is a little bit more complex and we need to work with legal on making sure it really establish it in the right parameters. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in the next item.
And I think this is a really important point that you bring up from a parcel perspective, not people, parcels. We have about 2% of the parcels are considered renters. So, we're looking at some data that we found was about 1,300 of the parcels are renters. And that expansion of that customer assistance program to those, as well as the apartment complexes like Jim is talking about, et cetera, I think just further allows us to get funds to those that meet the criteria that you identified, the income-based criteria and or PG&E CARES Act. So just another bit of information there.
So for clarification, a tenant themselves would not be able to apply for the opt-out program. Understood.
You have to be, basically, you have to own that parcel. And remember, it's only going to be for parcels that have a single unit, single residential unit on it. That's the
So
key
only
thing.
single family
Only,
homes.
well, single family, if you're a single owner of a townhome or condo, you can, but that's it. Like if you own a multi-unit complex, unless they individually have separate parcel numbers, it won't qualify. So
Additional thing, if I could have clarified, I wasn't part of this process when they went out to do the discussions on the opt-out portion of it. In terms of external affairs, do you all recall what the feedback was from the community in terms of their concern and why they would like the opt-out option? What was the impetus for the creation of that?
Yeah. Actually, it's good that Rachel's stepping up to the mic because number one, she can speak much clearer than any of us, and she can address your question.
So to address that question, we actually didn't hear a lot from the community about an opt-out. The community's concerns, I think, focused more around change. This is something new. We've billed like this since the agency was formed. And then that larger annual payment, which is why, FYI for you and for our new board members, as we went through this process, the board decided to extend our outreach and our engagement with the community for an additional about 8 months. As the county worked through their contract with Easy Smart Pay, so we could better understand the impact this change may have on some property owners. And so once that program went through at the county level, only then did we come back to the board for board consideration on if we wanted to move, the board wanted to move billings to the tax roll. So the feedback on opt-out basically came from the BPC committee and from board directive, not overwhelming directive from the community. Their feedback was a little bit different. As well.
And can you clarify what the different amount would be? Because right now it would be monthly and then it would transition over to an annual amount that is put on their property tax. And what would be the difference of that?
yeah, so right now the way we bill, so for Salinas, for example, when they get their bill, there's two parts to the bill. There's, for the Monterey one portion, and then there's for the Salinas collection portion. So we bill on a bi-monthly basis. So like our fee basically is $44. So it would be $88 that they'd see on the bill for Monterey one. And then the Salinas portion, if I remember right, I think it's $5. So it'd be $10 for a 2-month period in essence. So what would happen, with the tax roll is I'm going to make up this number, but so in that case, it'd be 88 times 6 because, we bill 6 times a year. That annual amount for Monterey one would show as one tax code item on your property tax bill. And then what we're trying to do with the county is to set up a second one for the Salinas collection fee. So it'll actually be a little bit more transparent for the customer because they'll see, okay, here's the one we're paying Monterey one water. Here's what we're paying Salinas. Basically, it'll be an annual amount for both in essence. So for Salinas, it would end up showing as basically $60. Now that's at the current rate on the bill. And for ours, it would be, like I said, the 88 times 6, or it's about what?
So,
over $500.
So Fred, can I confirm something with you?
Sure.
With our current billing system, we use an external company
Yes.
to send by mail bills to all our customers who then decide whether they want to go online to pay that once every 2 months or write a check once every 2 months. But money goes out of our customers' accounts 6 times a year coming to us.
Right.
If we switch to the tax rolls, that's going to stop happening.
Yep.
And if they pay property taxes in the way in which property owners who pay their own property taxes, not through a mortgage, escrow, withholding, whatever, they'll pay a much larger bill twice a year, unless they opt into Easy Smart Pay, in which case they'll be paying it once a month. Now, you're smarter than me, but I ran a spreadsheet to see what the difference would be for paying the same annual amount of money 6 times a year versus twice a year if I kept the money in a account earning 5%. And it turns out by going to the tax rolls, I make about another $5 a year in interest because I'm not paying every 2 months money to Monterey One Water. So would this also apply to any of those multifamily property owners who already have built into the rent their payments, collecting via their rent enough to cover all their other costs plus what they pay to the county, pay to us every 2 months?
They would
And,
absolutely realize those additional interest earnings you just mentioned. Absolutely.
And for them, for their 100-unit apartment building, going from paying every 2 months to just twice a year is what? They could earn an extra $500 a year
It just depends on the size.
on
but
the
yeah, it
size
could be.
of the
Yeah.
bill to us. Sorry,
Yeah,
just wanted
Can I,
clarification.
Anthony, can
appreciate
I
that.
answer one of your other
Yes.
questions, if you don't mind, after you're done?
I was just going to share that. So for me, what my concern is, as a representative from the city of Salinas, is that, and what I've heard from feedback from consumers in my city is they can afford, and maybe not really, but it's easier to pay the monthly or bi-monthly fee of $88. To transition that to be $528 is not something that, a lot of people in my city and in disadvantaged communities can afford. So the impetus, from what I understand in my community, for the desire to have an opt-out feature is those who cannot financially afford the transition of $88 to $528. Obviously, I recognize that tenants are going to not have that choice, but there still are, homeowners in my city that would qualify as low income. And so just to share that, especially for senior citizens in my city.
Could I just, for a point of clarification,
Sure.
I think that's what part of the conversation was with the Easy Smart
Yeah.
program, so that they can pay their tax rolls monthly, right? So
Oh,
so there's,
understood.
Yeah.
If I can just use the city of Salinas as an example. So Anthony, to your house right now, you're receiving a bill every 2 months. We're $44 and Salinas adds $5. That's $98 every 2 months is the bill you receive. And moving to the tax rolls, if you don't do Easy Smart Pay, sorry, I keep pointing at you, Supervisor Church. We know the money's not going to you, but so $98 every 2 months. If it's tax rolls, it's $294 twice a year in December and April. That's the $588 that you talked about.
Yes.
So that is a big difference, right? Going from 98 every 2 months to 294 every 6 months. However, this board told us don't bring anything back until the county has an option to pay on a monthly basis. So that brings us, frankly, it's even better than the $98 you're paying. It gets it down to the $49 per month if you do
So
the
just
ACH.
for clarification, with that new system in place, people are going to be able to pay on a monthly basis,
They certainly
breaking down
can.
that 528 to monthly.
And
basis.
it's not only
Yes.
just our bill,
It's
it's the
all of-
entire property
Yes.
tax bill that they can do. So it's a
Yeah,
huge
let's
benefit.
Yeah.
let's focus on that. It's not, you can't carve up your property tax bill.
But it's just the entire bill can be done in monthly installments.
Exactly.
And is that program up and running now?
Yes.
It hasn't come back.
Actually, you're answering questions now.
course it is.
I'm trying to remember, what's the monthly fee on that? There's a monthly fee, isn't there?
It depends. Rachel, do you want to talk
Sure.
about that?
Yeah. So if you choose to do ACH, so that's that same service Fred described in the proposed opt-out program where you enroll and it automatically comes out of your account each month. There is no fee associated with it. If you'd like to pay by credit card, then there is a 1.99% fee if you use a credit card, which is similar to, like, for example, at Monterey One Water, if you use a credit card, there's a fee as well that goes to the processing entity.
And
I
what
did
about
too- yeah.
Easy Smart Pay? Is there a fee on that?
that's what she was just talking about.
Yeah. Oh, it sounded like it was the opt-out program.
No, it's
No.
Easy Smart Pay.
It goes
Okay.
to, sorry, it's the same type of service. If
The
you want to
ACH.
keep the Easy Smart Pay option with, if you'd like to enroll without a fee into
But-
Easy Smart Pay.
But with the Easy Smart Pay, if I throw a credit card down, that's where I get charged the 3% fee or something.
Correct. It's about
If-
2% and they are working. So Easy Smart Pay, Mike, how many counties are they in now? Let's put Mike on the spot.
Put your microphone in front of you.
That's what I thought.
Half
yeah.
of 54,
27.
27 counties.
So
So to-
there's no fee if you do essentially your debit card or your bank
Right.
account.
Yeah,
it's-
give them your bank account and they link it and they take, yeah.
Exactly.
Got it.
And they auto debit it out.
Thank you.
And then also just one other clarifying point. So billing responsibility currently resides 100% with property owners right now as our billing stands. As Paul shared earlier, 2% of residential property owners have elected to have a renter pay the bill on their behalf.
Yeah.
But ultimately, the responsibility of the bill is still with the property owner. And if somebody in that 2% of that renter group were not to pay, we would put a lien on the property. And because it ultimately comes back to being the property owner's responsibility. So that is already the shared sewer system billing format.
So are you?
Point of clarification
Sure,
on that
yeah,
particular
sure,
part. If the renter doesn't pay, do we reach out to the property owner before we put the lien on?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Oh.
Yeah, that's the whole lien process that we go through every year and we bring to the board, basically. Yes.
I mean, you usually, if you start with if you start the process for a lien, then there's some extra charges, but I just didn't, before we start the process, do we reach out to the property owner?
There's
Multiple
several different
times.
notices. There's actually 3 different notices basically that are sent out. My understanding is both to the renter and to the property owner, basically.
Yes, to lien a property or to do anything on the property tax roll, which we'll learn more about in the next item, there has to be noticing directly to the property owner and through the most current list, like as kept by the county.
How much time passes from the time a tenant fails to pay his bill to the time the property owner gets the first notice that his tenant has failed to pay the bill? How much time passes?
Well, so what would happen? So we bill on it basically every 2 months. So if they're delinquent, in essence, remember for the board, we kind of use a cutoff of December of each year. So, if they have fees delinquent as of December for the first notice before it goes for lien, that would typically go out in February. The second one would go out in April, and then third one would go out in June.
So it could be 8 months before they receive their first notice.
So a
Is
tenant
that
could,
true? February.
It could be
Ballpark.
4 to 8 months, just saying. Yeah.
Long time.
Yeah, it's a
so
long time.
the
It's a
smart
long-
tenant who knows he's about to move out 8 months ahead of time will stop paying his sewer bill under his lease, and he'll be long gone before the landlord discovers that the landlord now owes all those back amounts. Well, that's why the tenant times it so he gets the security deposit back before the landlord knows, right?
Just as a little clarification onto that, if I, or.
Yes.
We're only talking about 2% of the renters are actually paying.
Yeah.
So
Correct.
I'm sort of assuming that these might be special instances, such as example, a relative is renting a place or, into there. So it's probably, it's not going to be a particularly serious problem for most landlords, is what I'm pointing out.
It shouldn't, and I would assume that the 2% of landlords out there that have their tenants pay this bill on their behalf have that specified in the lease agreement. Well, if it's specified in the lease agreement, and now we're on the tax rolls, change your lease agreement and say to the tenant, hey, in addition to your rent check, write me another check for this $44 a month. You don't write it to Monterey One Water, you write it to me.
And part of the outreach plan, which we will discuss a little bit in the next item and in more detail in coming months, will be targeted outreach based on board feedback, but there will be information going out to tenants. So those tenants understand the change that is about to happen. And so that we're directly giving them input so that they can monitor and advocate on the on behalf of themselves as well. And then we'll be also emailing or contacting the property owner as well, so they know from their angle that perhaps they need to relook at their lease. So we'll be doing direct targeted outreach to the different customer groups.
And the homeowner associations as well too.
Mhm.
Right.
Yep.
We go to Director Coletti because I think we interrupted before he was
Oh,
done.
no. Points of clarification are good. This is adding a layer of confusion, and I think we spend the Prop 218 money on this outreach program we're talking about instead. You know, it's going to be, Pacific Grove has an add-on fee for a master fee or for a sewer collection fee. I think it's the largest in the agency.
It is.
So the ratepayers in Pacific Grove are going to see a nice fat increase in their property tax. It's going to happen. And this almost seems like it would provide an opportunity for people to think there's a way of quote unquote opting out instead of just facing the hard facts that the district wants their money. And the best way for them to get the money is to put it on the tax rolls. I mean, that's just the way it is. And I think it's inevitable. And I'm also with Director Cronin. I think landlords always pay the sewer bill. I mean, I've heard
Apparently 2% don't.
2% don't, but
That's an oddball 2%.
I would love to see that lease agreement.
That's just me. But
I know mine don't. Yes. So, but you know, and it's going to impact people. People are going to see they're going to get notices from their mortgage provider that their escrow balance is, shy. And therefore, there's going to be an increase in their monthly mortgage payment. That's going to affect a lot of people. But if the board wants to put the collection on the tax roll, which is the question, then that pain is coming no matter what. And I want to see the board spend a lot of time and the resources available to really inform people what's coming and not add in a layer of confusion that maybe, would make the matter even worse. Because I think clarity is going to help perhaps lessen this pain, as it were. And if we can just focus on getting the ratepayers the information they need, and we're focused on actually transitioning to this new collection method, I think those are the two things that would be most important to do.
We'll go to Director Herbino and then followed by Director Ragsdale Cronin.
So what these two directors had previously said is I once you see the kind of the nuts and bolts, I know you did a lot of work on this, Fred, but we're kind of doing the work as for Easy Smart Pay and spending a lot of money doing it. There is an option to do the monthly, bi-monthly, or however you want to do it. I think Director Luke is right in terms of, focusing in on outreach on the, not only on Easy Smart Pay, but also on the assistance program. So, because we've been talking about this assistance program for a long time, but it just seems like the number of people in each community that's signed up for it, it doesn't really increase too much.
It's because of basically because the CARES program is the lowest base. And so that's why it's been a relatively low enrollment amount. Yeah.
And that's why the restructuring of it, we certainly hope will change that, opening up to renters, reducing those income levels. And so increasing those income levels to allow more people to be eligible, et cetera. So that's that has been a focal point.
So
You're
at the end of the day, I think that if we were to do an opt-out, I would suggest a 1-year opt-out with our reserves, and just to make sure that everybody is not shocked by what's going to happen. Staying it out 2 and 3 years is a little too much. Thank you.
Director Ragsdale Cronin, followed by Director Rocha.
Thank you. Thank you. So one of the concerns I have as a politician is we talk about this big increase on my property taxes. Okay. Yeah, my property taxes are going to go up, but I'm not sending or Monterey 1. I almost said PCA from bad habit. I'm not sending y'all a check. It's a wash. And I mean, yeah, it's going to be a bigger chunk. It's going to be the 250 something, whatever number you came up with in Salinas versus $49 every
98. 98 versus 294.
Right. I'll get my numbers straight someday. Maybe. But anyway, and that's what makes people nervous. Your taxes are going to go up. Your taxes are going to go up. Well, yeah, my taxes are going to go up, but my bills are going to go down. It's a wash. And so, yeah, if we're going to do a program, I would certainly agree with that. The shortest period possible. I don't think we need a program at all. That's my personal opinion. I don't see the need for it. I think we're, like Tyler said, rip the Band-Aid off, kick the can down the road, whatever it is. The county has a monthly payment option. There you go. But I caution everybody when we say our bills are going to go up, make sure you preface it with, yeah, my tax roll is going to go up. Yeah, my escrow account's going to go up. Actually, mine won't because I don't pay my taxes through escrow. But it's $50 here, $50 there. And it makes me nervous when we talk about things going up. And that's what the people hear. My taxes are going up. We don't talk about, we're not sending you a bill anymore. Your sewer bill from us goes away. You won't see a letter from M1W anymore. So that's something in the outreach that we talked you talked about. I think that's where you gotta really spend your money and your time, is making sure people understand it's dollar in, dollar out.
Director Rocha.
Just point of clarification, does the Easy Smart Pay have any eligibility requirements, or can anyone use that program?
I mean, as long as you're the registered owner, for that parcel, then yeah, you can register for the program.
There's no income or any other eligibility.
Okay.
Well, wouldn't
Real property owners. Yeah.
in a sense, there would be, you'd have to have a bank account somewhere.
They could do a
Unless you
credit
get a
card,
credit
but
card.
there'd be a fee.
Yeah, but there'd be a fee, right?
Okay. I appreciate the dialogue. I appreciate hearing from everyone. My opinion has changed on this. My biggest concern was people's cost going up dramatically from 98 to 500. That was my concern, and people's ability to pay that. Hearing that we have the opportunity to go to a monthly system through the Easy Smart Pay, that gets rid of that concern for me. And I would like for the revenue to remain within the customer assistance program to be used for programs that really are in desperate need for low income constituents that cannot pay certain things or need additional support, whereas this opt-out program would not apply to anyone on the basis of income. So for me, I could support this move, understanding that Easy Smart Pay applies to everyone. And I don't see how it could be beneficial for someone to have to pay an $87 opt-out fee. Kind of, for me, defeats the whole purpose of even having an opt-out program if the concern is how much you're going to pay. So thank you for the clarification. I appreciate it.
Vice Chair Williamson.
I'll move to not move forward with an opt-out option.
Is there a second?
Second.
You got a lot of them.
Some throw
Okay.
things at me. Okay.
Okay. Let's go out to the public.
I think we already did.
Oh, we did already. Boy, that the discussion was so long. All right, bring it back to the board. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions?
I'm going to abstain.
One abstention. So semi-unanimous approval. I will make one final comment on this, which is kind of related to Director Ragsdale Cronin's remark that some people think they make the statement, my tax bill is going to go up. The bill that you get from the county tax assessor's office is not exclusively a tax bill. And I would just suggest, because we have someone in the room who knows something about the County Board of Supervisors, is there any way to get that bill that comes from the tax assessor's office retitled as a tax and service fee bill?
Well,
You don't have to answer the question right now.
I just want to point out that the Board of Supervisors doesn't have control over the tax. They're separately elected, so it's just a little clarification on that.
But you probably have more influence than I do, so. All right. Thank you very much. So we move on, unless staff had anything else to add?
No, I just wanted to say thank you for this discussion. I mean, we've been talking about this for a long time. I also appreciate talking about outreach and customer service, because that's frankly teeing up perfectly into the next presentation on implementation, because that's where we were focusing on, is how to get the information out there and how to help the most number of people. So
we'll
thank you
go
for that.
to agenda item 12D. Fred again.
Yeah, thank you very much. So this item is basically to consider the proposed implementation plan for placing the sewer service fees on the Monterey County tax roll. So a lot of this is going to be updated information that we have for you tonight. We have a presentation for this as well too. So Chai, if you can go to the next slide, basically. So we're going to basically split this up a little bit. Rachel's going to handle the first couple slides. I'll handle a couple, and Mike's going to kind of wrap it up for us, kind of talking about some additional information we became aware of, kind of the plan for rolling out the tax roll, and just other important information for the board. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rachel.
Thanks, Fred. Rachel Godoyne. I'm on the Government and Community Relations team. And tonight, just to keep things as straightforward as possible, our focus is going to be on Monterey One Water's implementation plan and responsibilities. Any member entity electing to bill via the tax roll will also have to abide by the requirements and the tasks to be detailed tonight. And then at the end of the presentation, we'll discuss how we're coming alongside to support those member entities who also want to bill for their portion of the sewer service fee on the tax roll. All right, so as a public entity, we can place a fee for our service on the property tax roll, and the process to do so is governed by the Health and Safety Code. Tonight, we will review the implementation plan for moving wastewater billing to the tax roll. The plan was drafted with consideration for the following requirements set forth in the Health and Safety Code. So number one, wastewater fees, whether set in the current year or as in our case, was previously set through a multi-rate schedule, must be approved in accordance with California Proposition 218 and by a 2/3 vote of the governing body. So this applies now as we are moving our billings to the tax roll and to all proposed rate increases moving forward. The board would need a 2/3 majority vote to increase the rates. Second, annually, the board must adopt resolutions to place that year's fees on the property tax roll. The resolutions must also pass with at least a 2/3 majority vote and follow a similar noticing process to Proposition 218. So our legal team will also conclude this presentation and can provide more specifics if needed at the end. Or do you want to add anything now, Jim? We're going to go into, okay. All right, we'll go into the schedule and then we'll give an opportunity for legal to add. Okay, so this is us, no opt-out program. All right, so using the requirements set forth in the Health and Safety Code, we recreated this implementation schedule with key tasks. So we backed into these dates from the end. So we'll actually start by looking at the slide right to left. So property owners receive their tax bills around October. So to prepare, print, and mail property tax bills by this date, the county has an August 10th deadline for Monterey One Water and other public entities who are utilizing their service for billing of fees on the property tax bill to submit their data to the county. So that basically leaves now through June with a little bit of wiggle room in July to complete the following key tasks. Now we're going to switch back and we're actually going to look at the schedule left to right. So first, we must publish an annual rate report. The annual rate report is to be produced each year and is a listing of each parcel and the annual wastewater fee for that parcel. We then will schedule a public hearing for the board to consider adoption of that annual rate report. We will mail a notice to all property owners, letting them know that the annual rate report has been published, and it will provide information on how to participate in the scheduled public hearing. The mailing will occur at least 45 days prior to the public hearing. From there, we'll publish notices in the newspaper of the public hearing once a week for 2 successive weeks leading up to the public hearing. And then we will hold that public hearing, including any customer protests, for the board to adopt and place the annual rate report on the property tax roll and reaffirm that we set our rates in compliance with Proposition 218 and that 2/3 majority vote, which back in 2021, you did. So except for the mailed notice, we'll complete these tasks annually moving forward. So in addition to those tasks related to placing the wastewater service fees on the property tax roll, we'll also be working in the months of April and May with staff tasks occurring in March to enroll customers in the updated customer assistance program. And Fred will talk shortly about the important updates we've made to the customer assistance program that we hope will be able to increase enrollment and increase ultimately the impact that program can have in the community. Okay, we get to skip this one. So there's no opt out. All right. So now that we're in the implementation process for the billing change, we'll move to phase 2 of the outreach plan, which has been shared throughout this process. And I will share again in the coming months. Because I anticipate it morphing a little bit now based on your feedback tonight and your decision in the last item so that we can really target that communication as was discussed, streamline it, and really make sure that we're providing as much support for the customer to understand this change. So in general, phase 2 of the targeted outreach campaign will focus on 3 key areas. First, different types of mailings that will go directly to the property owner and the current customer. So think about like those renters out there who that 2% who are currently paying the bill. In addition, though, it'll also go to those who haven't been receiving our bill. So for example, a homeowners association who has been billing for each condo in their complex, but each condo has its own parcel. So now we'll be billing each of those condos on the property tax bill. So instead of being billed through their HOA, they'll now be getting they'll now be receiving their bill via the property tax roll. So those types of customers will also receive targeted direct communication straight to their residents. And so while the bulk of our spending will be focused on that direct communication, we'll also have strategies with that present broader opportunities to communicate this change. So those will be focused around paid print and digital promotions. So we already briefly talked about those newspaper ads we'll have to run. We'll also do social media and other print and digital mediums. Then finally, our customer service and relations teams will provide individual and group support through phone assistance, community presentations, and other possible strategies as needed. So for example, potentially like extended support hours so that we can make assistance available maybe more like in the evening hours when people aren't at work, if they have questions or clarifying points and they want to talk with a staff member. We'll also have ask a staff a question online, kind of like bot systems, trying to provide ample opportunity for customers to get clarification. So while some customers will have action items related to this change, so like stopping any bill pay they may have set up through their bank, so completely separate from Monterey One Water, or maybe letting their impound account know that this change is coming. Most customers will not have any action items they need to do. But communication, however, will include resources for the various scenarios I've just described, and additional ones that a current or future customer may want to better understand. So I think this is a crash course in the implementation plan and the requirements as outlined in the Health and Safety Code. We'll now move on to learning a little bit more about the customer assistance program and the changes.
Thanks. Yeah, actually, great. Thanks, Rachel. So yeah, want to kind of just remind the board a little bit about kind of how we're looking to change the customer assistance program for going forward in essence. we're basically expanding it in several different ways. So first of all is the properties themselves. Right now, basically, you can only apply for the customer assistance program if you're a single family home. That's it. I mean, condos and townhomes are not eligible basically because they're kind of part of a multi-unit complex in essence. So with our program, you'll be able to apply for those. I mean, as long as they relate directly to a parcel. This is why we actually broke this out in two different phases. Phase one is how we're looking to implement the program initially, and we'll expand it to phase two, which will deal with the renters as well too. The renters is a little bit more complex, and we need to deal a bit with legal counsel as well too, as far as doing that, but we will be doing it for renters as well too. So part of it is right now, the only way people can qualify under the program if they're enrolled in what's called the PG&E CARES program. So that's a pretty low level of income that people have to have. If they're above that, and they don't qualify under our program. We, in talking with the board previously, they actually approved us to expand it as long as we went forward with doing it on the tax roll to do two additional areas. So PG&E also has what's called a FARA enrollment program. Basically, those are at a higher level of income. And then we're also expanding it to allow people, they can submit their 1040s as well too. So the idea is people, and you can see it on your screen as well too, 60% of what's considered the lower income levels, that's the base that we're going to apply. So people, based upon these programs, if they fall within those income levels, they'll be able to receive assistance for their program. The way the program will work, so this first year, and we talked about this earlier, because we have kind of a condensed time frame for going over the tax roll, we'll be allowing for customer assistance from basically April through May. But as the slide shows in the future, we'll be having a much longer period from what we anticipate going from February to May of each year. And per the board's direction, we're expanding the amount of the credit as well too. Previously under the program, it was a 2-month credit on your bill. With the new program, with us going to the tax roll, it will actually be a 4-month credit, obviously 1/3, if you're not 2 years. So pretty significant change with that, with all of these changes. Oh, sorry. Yes, thank you. And this kind of just adds a couple of other points as well too. One thing, first of all, the applications will be available both in English and in Spanish. And we will allow for different ways to apply for the applications. We'll have a secure online website. We pretty much almost have that set up and ready to go. But people will still be able to also apply as they currently can now, either by mail or in person. And like I mentioned on this slide as well too, the renter component is a little bit more complex. We want to make sure we're doing everything just right. So we'll roll that out as basically phase 2 of the program after consulting with legal and making sure everything's in line. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike, and he's going to talk about kind of what we've done as far as member outreach.
Hey, Fred, can I just add
Oh,
one really
sure.
quick thing
Yeah,
fast?
absolutely.
And one thing to note on this schedule is that the way the customer assistance program will now work is that the amount put on the property tax roll will be 4 months less than it would be if you were not enrolled in the program. So at one point we had talked about, will there be checks? Will there be credits? How will it work? And ultimately what we once we better understood the health and safety code requirements and that annual rate report that we have to produce each year, that's how we backed into now there'll be an enrollment period in the beginning of each year, and then the amount will basically come off of their total amount and will reflect that in the annual rate report. And then on the property tax roll.
Yeah, yeah.
So one of the things that we've been doing is coming alongside the member entities that we bill on behalf of those member entities on our bill for Monterey One Water. And so we're looking to come alongside them and have this support. And so as Rachel talked about earlier, as part of the health and safety code, is that, the things that we have to do as Monterey One Water, we're going to make sure that those member entities that are going to the tax rolls with us, we're all on the same path together. So if we're required to do one item, our member entities we're going to have that same path moving forward with them. And so what that means is that, so if they're going to put their requirements to go on the tax roll, we're going to ask them to put the collection fees to mirror what we're doing. So that would be a 2/3 vote and the annual resolutions for the future rate increases, just like what we're doing.
And why don't you say who that is, just so everyone knows
Yeah,
what
so-
entity? It's not all of you.
Yeah, so it's City of Salinas, Seaside County Sanitation District, which includes Sand City, Delray Oaks, and Seaside. And we have the City of Monterey and the City of Pacific Grove. So those 5 entities, 6.
Aren't you guys do Moss Landing, don't you? Yeah.
So those are the entities that we're working with. And so in February, we met with all of those staffs to go over this process with them. What we were asking from them is that by March 15th, that they're going to commit to going this path with us. And so, we'll be following up with them, making sure to remind them, hey, are you guys okay? They'll probably be talking to the mayors, city managers to make sure, and may come to a city council meeting, but just to make sure that there is a commitment from them, because what that does is that what it's going to help us do as the Monterey One Water staff, we're going to help customize the implementation for those member entities. And so if the City of Salinas needs something in particular, we're going to come alongside your staff and make that effort to make sure that your public, everybody else understands how we're going to move forward. And so one of the things that's really important is these revised collection agreements that we have with our member entities. So at the City of Monterey, we have an agreement with you of how we collect the funds and then return them back to you. And so we're going to be drafting these new agreements and making sure that they're both favorable for the city and for Monterey One Water, so that we have more of a mutual protection and value for each entity moving forward. So I think that's really important. And so to wrap all of that up, is that the recommended action that we're asking for the board tonight is that we're going to ask that you approve the proposed implementation plan for placing sewer service fees on the tax roll. And so this is basically saying, hey, go ahead, and we're going to move to the tax roll and direct staff to prepare an annual rate report that Rachel talked about. So that basically says you're a single family residence. This is your rate. This is your property number. Issue the required notices with the as far as like the noticing of our member entities and the public, have these public hearings so that we have these fees on the tax roll for fiscal year 24-25 in accordance with the California Health and Safety Code. So I think all of us are here to answer any questions that people might have.
Yeah, and Jim, I don't know if you want to, I know, I'm sure you had some additional comments. Yeah.
I just want to clarify kind of the last point Mike is talking about. There's really 2 different tracks here. We currently collect fees for our member agencies, and if we move forward with this, we're moving to a period where our fees will be placed on the tax rolls. The 5 entities that we're talking about have the option to put theirs on the tax roll. And if they don't, we won't be able to collect them for them. So in order for their fees to be collected by us from the tax rolls, they have to follow the exact same process we're going to follow. So they're 2 parallel but independent tracks. But if a member agency did not elect to do that, I think what we're saying is M1W would no longer collect your rates for you, for that member entity.
They would have to do their own
They'd have to do
invoicing.
your own collection, yeah.
Yeah.
We did offer in our member entity meetings that if a member were to want to explore that and select that option, we will still be maintaining a database that can be exported via an Excel format for that regional economies of scale. If we're going out and confirming what's happening at a parcel, we don't want one of our members having to go out and confirm what's happening at that parcel. And if on the treatment side, we're charging for it to be a t-shirt shop, we want it to be consistent across the board, and that the collection side is charging for it to be a t-shirt shop as well. So we could share that data if the format in which we can share it was compatible with whatever billing system they selected.
Director Rocha, you had a question?
Thank you. Can you clarify what services are provided by the customer assistance program? So it says program eligibility, customer assistance program. What does that mean for a consumer?
So basically the idea is, we established this several years ago, the customer assistance program. The idea was to help, people of lower incomes, to help them kind of meet, being able to pay their sewer bills, basically. So just to give you a little background, they can't be funded by sewer fees, basically. The only ways they can be funded is by, in essence, non-sewer fees. We have a limited amount of basically non-sewer fees. Our primarily non-sewer fees are in essence the penalties, that we collect on delinquent accounts in essence. So when we started it initially, it was started at a lower amount. I think we funded about $80,000 initially. This past fiscal year, we funded it at about $200,000 basically to fund the program for 23-24. We've talked about this with the board. We're going to be keeping it at that level because what will happen when we go to the tax roll, and we talked about this earlier, the delinquency level will drop significantly. So likely the penalties will drop significantly too. So we want to just make sure that we have a really good stable base, for funding the program. And so with these proposed changes though, because the usage has been relatively low this year, like I think so far this year has been 7% of what's been budgeted. We want to, ideally, we'd love to be able to give out the whole amount, to eligible customers. So that's why with the tax roll program, we can basically free up additional staff time to be able to, provide more assistance to customers.
So Anthony, to be specific to what does a customer get out of it, it's 4 months of service at our $44, which ends up being $176 per year. So
Cost savings.
Cost savings. So going to the Salinas example, which I said, I think with your fee added on, because we're paying our fee with a customer service, you aren't. That $588 per year turns into $412 per year, or the two payments every 6 months end up being $206 because of the customer service customer assistance program.
Because you would cover 4 months.
Exactly. There's a reduction in what's put on your tax roll.
And just to add on to that as well too. So the city of Monterey recently, they've actually have also decided to enter into a customer assistance program. They're mirroring our programs. So for those customers in Monterey, under our program, they'll get the benefit of 4 months credit, not only for our portion of the fee, but also for Monterey's. And this is also open to any other entity on the board. Should they decide to do so in the future, they could definitely do that as well.
Thank you. And that's really helpful information. And the income eligibility limits, it says lower income 60% AMI. Where was that number identified that 60% was?
It's through Monterey County, and I forget the exact source, Rachel. What was it?
Well, it comes from the states.
Okay.
Yeah, income levels. And how did we arrive at 60%? So lower income is ranged from 60 to 80%. And the current program is what the state calls very low income. So for example, in this proposed in the updated customer assistance program, a household size of 1 must have an income of $54,800. Previously, it was $39,440. So as we went through this process with the board, they looked at an 80% AMI level, which would be more like 67,000. They looked at where we were, and ultimately the directive was, maybe 60% is a nice place to start. And see how many people qualify and how much funding we can get out into the community.
Because even that certainly expands the eligible people out there
significantly.
So,
that's what's awesome, I think.
Significant delta of about $15,000 in change in eligibility requirements.
Yeah, because it's my understanding HCD has 80% AMI as low income, and that is 67,450 for Monterey County.
Correct.
And so I think if we would consider going down the route of using their methodology instead, we might see an increase in usage of that fund for us.
So I think we just wanted to do an incremental approach.
Understood. Totally makes
We have
sense.
this much money. Let's see how much starts withing away.
And part of it is too, we're expanding. If you look at the number of the parameters, I mean, it's not only just single family, it's, we're doing it for condos, townhomes. We're doing it for those 2 additional programs and for the renters. So we really want to be able to offer it to as many people as we can. So we thought it's kind of like Paul saying, start low, if we're still not using the full amount, then we could definitely look to change it in the future. Absolutely.
And so we'll bring it back to the board and
Mhm.
just, we do this on a monthly basis in terms of telling you how we're doing. So you can then change it at a future board meeting if you would like, if we.
And then you said 200,000 is what you currently have allocated for that.
That what's in there?
That's
right now?
that's what we allocate, that we've allocated for this year. Paul, is 200,000. Yeah.
And in the previous presentation, we talked about the potential of pulling from reserves to potentially have funded the opt-out program. How much is in reserves for that program
The
now?
non-fee reserves or non-rate reserves.
The
are
non-fee reserves that we kind of for last year was about 900,000 basically. Yeah.
Okay. And then in your presentation, you mentioned that if the member agencies choose not to pursue the kind of simultaneous process of M1W, they would have to do their own process to do their own collection. Would that also mean if they were to go down the route of doing their own collection, that they would not be able to use the the customer assistance program? Or would these still be
No,
eligible
so,
for that?
Let's say City of Salinas says, no, we don't want to go on the tax rolls with you, Monterey One Water. We would still be going on the tax rolls, assuming you're voting that direction. People in your city would still be eligible for the customer assistance program. The city would just bill your $5 a month to your customers. So that's a
Understood.
separate.
And right now, if we were to do it simultaneous as you would take care of that if we followed your process.
Pretty much, yeah.
We would come alongside and support,
Yeah,
and
help.
basically
That's the
by
key thing.
March 15th, we've asked each city to let us know if they want to commit. And then basically Fred and I are making a form, and they would let us know what support they want. Because like, for example, some entities may want to do their own branded communications and do their own protest process, or we can do those mailings on behalf of, along with ours. So we're going to customize it, but in collaboration with the staff and legal counsels at each member entity. Because ultimately it is the responsibility of the member entity, but we recognize that we are initiating this change. So we want to provide as much support as possible from that staff standpoint, in recognition they may not have been planning like we have to allocate time to this.
And I'm assuming in your meetings, you've seen each of the entities have different resources available to them. For
Exactly.
instance, CCI County Sanitation, it's, frankly, part of the city, and they may not have the resources available, let's say, City of Salinas or Monterey may have.
Correct. Some of you
So-
have comms teams that may want to do your own outreach because it gives you an opportunity to push what your services are, what your needs are within your community and within your own sewer system master plans. But we're going to create, as was mentioned, custom implementation plans for each member based on where they'd like us to come along and support.
And the city councils would have to vote on that by March 15th.
So I don't.
No.
Yeah.
So what we've asked them to do, it's kind of a two-step process, and we kind of had it on a prior slide.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. Can you go back to, that prior one, Rachel? Yeah, that one, right? Or without opt-out program, the previous one. So go back two more. That one right there. So, it might have been even earlier than that. But anyway, what we're asking them for by March 15th is a commitment letter that basically says, yes, we want, we're going to go alongside with you in going to the tax roll, basically. But then what we'll be doing with
Hold on, just to clarify, Fred, that's a letter from staff.
That's a letter from
That is
staff.
not a commitment of the council.
That's exactly right, Paul.
Just to clarify that.
No, and that's great. And the commitment from council will be when they actually, basically do the public hearing in June. And then they have to, and this is what we talked about earlier, the 2/3 vote. So they basically have to do a 2/3 vote on two things. Number one, to reaffirm the fee that they want in place for next year for their sewer, collection fees. And the second thing, a 2/3 vote to actually place it on the tax roll as well too. Jim, you want to say something on that? Yeah.
Well, I'm not, we're not giving legal advice to the member agencies. I just got to put that asterisk on all of you.
Yeah.
M1 staff is providing support, but if they move forward and their rates were previously approved by 2/3 vote, so if those rates and existing rates were approved by 2/3, then what they've got to do is publish a report, which in the first year will include both a mailing and a send out of the report, which would include what the rate is on each one of the parcels. And I think staff is from M1W can assist with the compilation of those reports. We're looking at formatting the report such that, for example, a property owner in Salinas could see both what the M1W rate is and the Salinas rate is, recognizing that Salinas would only be approving the Salinas rate and going to the tax rolls, et cetera. So once that hearing is noticed, it would be held as a public hearing. The property owners then have the right to come in and lodge objections, and the council and or board would have to approve putting the report onto the tax roll by a 2/3 vote
by June.
By June.
Yes.
And the protest process is similar to Proposition 218, where it's 50% plus one. Would not allow it to move forward if you had
You know what might
that
be nice
protest from the customer base. Sorry.
is to come up with a fact sheet on this with some of these all bulleted out to provide to all the board members. So, easy reference sheet for them as their council members, board members, and or constituents ask them. I know it's a lot of information, so it's not as simple as 5 bullets, but I just think having it in one sheet may be helpful for all of you.
I think they already have the one sheet that they've shared with staff that could be shared with the board members. It simplifies.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great.
Thank you. Those are all my questions. Greatly appreciated.
Director Church.
Sure. I appreciate the revamping the customer assistance program. As you know, I've raised concerns about it a time or two about being underutilized. So it's good to see this. I'm unclear a little bit on how much money is being allocated to it. Is there a cap on, what's the kind of a cap, or is it going to be the same cap that we have now?
It's the same cap. The reason why is because when we go to the tax roll, our delinquency levels are going to be much lower than basically what they are right now. So what they are right now, they're between 3 to 5%. With the county's historical rate has been less than 1%. So it's a significant drop. Therefore, our penalties, which is really the main source of non-fee revenues that we could use to fund it, will drop substantially. So we wanted to keep it at a level that we thought we could fund that program, with a pretty comfortable basis year to year.
A sustainable amount.
A sustainable rate. That's exactly right. So that's why, at least for now, we want to keep it at 200,000, see how it goes. We can always, we evaluate, work with the board to reevaluate it in the future.
Because just as a reminder, one customer group can't subsidize another customer group. So the customer assistance program, so that doesn't happen, has to be funded by non-wastewater fee revenue.
As we move into including renters, and I'm sure there'll be some looking at then as well a little differently, but that's good. I'll appreciate your explanation on that. My other question was, we do billing for all the entities, of course, in M1W. We do billing for outside agencies as well, for some.
We bill for like miscellaneous special types, like for example, liquid waste. That's probably our biggest example, I would say, where they use our facilities and then we bill them. So yeah, our customer service department also bills some of our other agencies. Paul, do you want to add something?
No, I was just going to ask, don't we also bill? I remember getting a call from a fire chief down in Chular that they received a bill from us. Do we bill on behalf of the county for something?
There are some of these properties that will actually be working with the county to transition to the counny.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Do we? And I guess this is something I just kind of, and I don't even know if it's correct. So I'm not trying to.
Sure.
I should normally ask this before a board meeting, but I've recently come aware of it. Do we bill for out at the Pajaro Sunny Mesa?
Yes, we do bill for Pajaro. That's correct. So and what we're doing with the county, what we'll be doing is, in essence, because it's the county's role, they will just kind of be taking that,
so the county will be doing the billing now.
Exactly.
Okay, because that was my concern, is whether they want to make sure they weren't being left out there. We communicated with them and
we'll be doing some additional follow-up, but yeah, we've already kind of let them know that, this is our plan, exactly.
That was my only concern that had just recently come up. Thanks.
And also to clarify, we will still have a billing system. We won't have a utility billing system. So a system that allows us to track what's happening at each parcel, how many units are there, what's the activity happening, who's the point of contact. So a a utility billing system is more detailed than, for example, if we had to invoice a consultant for something, for example. So we'll still have the ability to bill as needed. We just won't maintain a utility billing system.
So, oh, sorry. Director Coletti.
No, please, go ahead.
We have a potential, given what we have in reserves in places like LAIF and camp and the county pool, et cetera, particularly at current interest rates, for about $2 million or more a year in investment income. Does that qualify as non-ratepayer income?
I'm not the 218 expert, but I believe the conclusion was no, because it's derived from rate income. The penalties were the only area of non-rate income that you have.
But we could take that 900,000 in reserves of non-rate income, and the investment
Income on-
interest from
yeah.
that could
Just
be
from that,
used.
yes.
Sorry, if you permit me, could you go back to slide 2? So legal counsel said, I believe, adopt the resolutions to collect fee on the tax roll. It has to be done annually, requires a 2/3 approval of the Board of Directors of Monterey One Water for our fees. But did I hear you say it's a Prop 218 process? Do we have to mail notices and have hearings, et cetera, like we do when we set rates under Prop 218?
Now, there's two pieces to this. The rate that you're going to put on the tax rolls had to have been or is being approved by a 2/3 vote. In the case of M1W, your rates were the rates that are in existence right now were approved by unanimous vote. So you've checked that box. Then to place your rates onto the tax rolls, you have to publish this report every year that lists the parcel with the tax amount. You have the public hearing, and you have to approve that report being placed on the tax rolls by a 2/3 vote every year.
Okay.
So
I get that.
But it's not Prop 218. You do
It's
not,
not Prop
you do not need to mail to every customer
It's a
on
s-
this one.
well, it's
Yeah,
the
year two.
report is mailed to every
Well,
property
yes.
owner, so it's similar to 218.
But not having the response.
Jim, the only thing though, the first year for placing on the roll, it actually is kind of subject to Prop 218, right? It's the subsequent years that it's kind of, you don't have, the requirement kind of goes away for doing that, right?
Yeah, for the first year, Tom, there's a process that is similar to 218.
Yes.
Where the notice has to be mailed to the property owner with the amount you're going to place on the tax rolls being shown. And that property owner then knows this is the amount that's going to be on my tax rolls. I have the opportunity to come into the public hearing and object. So it's similar to 218.
Okay.
In subsequent years, you don't
have
have to mail the notice. You just have
It's
to
just a vote.
publish.
Till you get to the end of your current series of Prop 218 approvals.
Then increases to the rates are subject to Prop 218 as always.
Yep.
Okay.
And those increases, if you're not on the tax rolls, are only a majority vote. They're, 2/3 otherwise.
And a question about PII, what information is in this report that must be published?
The report is essentially, give a generic, it's an Excel spreadsheet that identifies the property owner, the parcel, the APN number, and the amount that's going to be collected in that year for that parcel. So it'll be a whole report of all
Yep, 60,000.
60,000 properties that were within M1W's service area with the rate that's going to be charged to each one of them identified next to it.
Now, is something like that done by the county annually, just over regular other things that are on our property and service fee bill?
So one of the nice advantages of us going, with the county tax roll, we'll be actually getting updates from the county every single year of basically all the parcels in our property area, and they'll be updating it with like for any changes in status. For example, if it was a vacant property and they've built on it. So we'll have better real-time information as to where the properties will be. So then we'll just basically apply our current rate structure to that information. We'll be able to generate the list that the county needs to assess the bill.
I don't think we can speak to the county, maybe Jim can, but to what the county's process is for the tax portion above the line.
Yeah.
But for those people below the line who are placing a fee, this is the process that governs it. So you have to follow this
thank you.
process.
So we don't know if the county does it in and of itself.
Right, for those, the
Just to answer
tax,
your question.
that tax
The
portion.
tax report, yeah, that's a little different. Yeah.
Director Coletti and then Director Ragsdale Kernan.
Thank you, Chair. So try to clarify this implementation plan. So every year, Monterey One Water is going to bring an annual report before each jurisdiction's city council for a vote. Is that correct?
No, we are going to produce an annual report
For the ratepayers.
May 1st
Yeah.
that has the parcel and the Monterey One Water amount next to it. If a member entity via the collection agreement has asked us to support in the preparation of the annual rate report for their residents and businesses as well,
Okay.
then we will clone that report essentially, and it'll be parcel and City of Pacific Grove's rates that you will then take to your city council. But for this board, it would be
Just our
parcel
portion of the rate.
Monterey One Water rate.
And this board is going to approve that on an annual basis.
Correct, by a
Yes.
2/3 majority vote.
And only on the first vote, and then it goes to a 50% vote. So it's every year a
Always.
2/3 vote.
You
Yes.
have to have a two.
And
Okay.
the separate rate increase
Right.
process,
Yeah.
separate process governed through California Prop 218,
Right.
but also has to have that 2/3 majority vote.
So I just want to clarify that. Yeah, that 2/3 vote every year is for two things. Basically, it's, just to make sure we kind of will ask the board to just reaffirm the rate for the next year and then also to place it on the tax roll. So you've got to have that 2/3 vote to place it on the tax roll every year.
Yeah, I think that's
Okay.
in the Constitution. But
The
okay.
2/3 vote, it only applies to the report.
Mhm.
It does
Yeah.
not apply to the rate unless we're holding a rate hearing.
Right. And that's
Mhm.
subject to
Okay.
218.
So it's
Correct.
I get that.
And so this actually implementation plan, it's really annual. Think of it annual. The only difference is if you take out the customer notification. We
I just
still
heard
have to-
someone say 50% on subsequent years instead of the 2/3.
Luke, what I was saying is if you're not putting your rates on the tax rolls,
Yeah.
your rate approval is a lower level. So this adds the 2/3 vote to
Got
the rate approval
Okay.
if you're going to put it on the tax rolls.
And the 50%, you might have heard that with the first year with the protest vote. If there's a protest vote of
Right.
50% plus one person,
Yeah.
then we can't put it on the tax roll. That's kind of where that.
That's the
50%
criteria for a Prop 218
Yes.
vote. So having that clarified, Pacific Grove, I think it's 170 or some odd percent of what the Monterey One water rates are, right? Somewhere in that neighborhood.
It's pretty similar now to our fee. It was much
Yeah.
higher before, but it's actually now pretty close to it. yeah.
77.94 is the combined rate for Pacific Grove and M1W per month.
So Pacific Grove and other agencies that are going to
77%.
77% that are going to assess a sewer collection fee of their own. I guess there's 5 member agencies that do this. If we were to do it ourselves and put it on the tax roll ourselves, and this is where I'm asking Monterey One Water to tell me what is the value added service of still having you collect the fee. Because really the ratepayers are paying it on their tax bill, but the money initially will come to you and then you disperse it to the city?
Yes. So the value, at least in our mind, is this. So our customer service department throughout the year will be kind of working with the county to make sure we have the most current data for all of our members, not only Pacific Coast, but everybody. So, I mean, absolutely, we could specifically turn everything over to Pacific Grove and say, from that point forward, okay, your staff, then yeah, you could look to place it on the roll yourself. but then, you would be responsible for kind of, I mean, we could share that stuff with you, but there'd still be some sort of admin fee involved if we did. If you decided to completely take it over, then, you'd have to have dedicated staff on your part to make sure you have the most current data, that you have the right rate for everybody. So that's really the added value that we have for doing that.
And
Well,
I
we
don't
were
know if-
locked in with you originally because we were making it a percentage of what your rates were. And so I don't think Pacific Grove wants to go out. And go ahead, Paul, you got
No,
something
I
to
just
say.
want to say,
Yeah.
with all the changes in terms of adding an ADU, or, if and when people get to add bathrooms, just that sort of double check to make sure we have the entire understanding of what we're billing for.
Yeah.
To me, that's the benefit. Other than that, I had the same question. It's like, why wouldn't the county just send you the money?
Right.
But
County staff did also indicate to us in our initial meeting, this was their preference, was for them to sign one contract with Monterey One Water and us to then sign contracts with each of you. That's still under review by their legal counsel. But that was a staff preference to then go to their legal counsel for review.
Okay, go ahead.
yeah. So another thing is, we will have more people going out doing checks on, is there an ADU? Is something changed? Just confirming to make sure we have the accurate data. I know in my discussions with specific Pacific Grove, about 2 years ago now, I guess just from a staffing perspective, there wasn't the resources to go do that. And I guess you have a fair number of ADUs and such going in the community.
They're going up every year, sure.
Yeah. And so that wasn't necessarily checked. So that is one benefit that I think can help out the cities and the CSI County Sanitation District.
Basically accurate data.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's exactly it.
Okay. Well, and I'm glad you brought up ADUs and secondary units, because we're talking back on the previous item, we were talking about what the cost would be. And I understand Director Cronin's point. It's a net zero change as far as the money that's going to be going out of your bank account in the end. But it's also a question of when that money comes out of your bank account. And if you're really going to juice your annual or your monthly mortgage, some you can pay twice a month, some you can only pay once a month. And if you've got an ADU, you're paying 2 bills. So you're going to realize a much higher per month mortgage payment as a result. And that's something we need to, I think, this is part of that outreach I mentioned earlier. And I think the outreach has to be tailored to the jurisdictions, that some jurisdictions have their own, their own sewer collection fee and some don't. And maybe that's incumbent on Pacific Grove, Salinas, the others, to let the ratepayers know the various scenarios that are coming down, the pike, because most people do have a mortgage and most people do have an escrow. Well, there are certainly thousands of our ratepayers that do, and not to be sensitive to the sticker shock that's coming their way, I think would be a mistake. And that's what I'm worried about.
Director Ragsdale Cronin.
I'd like to buy a vowel. No. Sorry, Rachel. You were up there doing that. We had a conversation. Anyway, so you were talking about putting together a little fact sheet. So here's one that I've been trying to put together in my head. When does my M1W bill stop and when does the tax bill show up? So am I going to be paying M1W up until December or?
So
June
go
30th.
ahead, Rachel.
Oh,
Yeah, no,
sorry.
go ahead. Yeah.
June 30th.
So do I pay in advance
2020.
or am I paying in arrears? How's that?
Your bill will stop June 30th, 2024. And then in terms of moving forward, how are you paying? It's relatively half
Right.
and half because your first payment is due in December. So
Gotcha.
you'll pay 6 months back. And then really, if you pay in one, it's 6 months back, 6 months forward. If you pay half,
Gotcha.
it's less. And right now that's what it is.
And I
1
think
month
that's
in arrears,
that's
1
something
month
that needs to
moving
get out
forward.
to the public, that you're not going to be paying up until
Yeah.
November and then get this new bill in December for
Yes.
6 months worth of service.
And
when
the
we-
outreach plan extends into that period where there's no bill. So we will be doing a bulk of our communicating actually in that July through October period to make sure that they have done everything they need to do to prepare for that shift.
And then lastly, just real quick, I want to thank staff and everybody that's been working on this, because it's obvious you've all done your homework really well. I've only been apprised of this for a very short time at this level, and you've given me every answer I need to make a quality decision moving forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Director Church.
Just no, one other question from the comment you raised. So June 30th is when the billing stops to individuals. And we're not going to be getting money coming in for some months then.
So, and let me clarify that a
So
little bit on the.
first of all, that is correct, right?
Yeah. So let me clarify one comment and I'll address the other as well too. So we are on two different billing cycles. We will have one for the peninsula and one for Salinas, basically. So what happens, if I remember right, I think this is with the peninsula, we bill them. So the May bill will be May and June, basically, in essence. So they will basically, and then it will stop. So then the Salinas bill, when they get it for June, will be, in essence, just a half a bill, in essence, because the rest is going, basically will stop at that point. And yes, there will be a time because of the fact we're not collecting it on a bi-monthly basis, or in essence, monthly, because of each cycle, that yes, we will not be collecting, or a minimal amount of funds will be collecting. We'll be collecting some from pure water, but not a lot for basically minimal for wastewater. That was one of the key things for us in establishing the 50% operating reserve that we did a few years ago, because we couldn't have done this program even a couple years ago because our reserves were not at the level that we could basically fund those periods of time that we were not getting cash in. Fortunately, we've built our reserves up, at a pretty good level right now that we can actually do this program. This is actually probably about the first year that we could have actually done this program because our reserves are in a healthy enough position to do it.
So we talked about doing this many, many years ago. And although it's efficient, we think it is going to be better for all customers in the long run. It just wasn't possible. Our finances were not at the level to allow this, like most other entities out there. So, thanks to the board for the small rate increases we've been doing and some of the large ones, but we are now in a position where we have the financial flexibility to move to the tax rolls.
Thank you for answering my question before I asked it. Because obviously you knew what I was going to raise there. Are we also prepared for when suddenly the public starts to get bills that are half what they were, or they don't get bills and they're suddenly starting to realize, well, wait, I didn't get my bill. I want to pay. I mean, we're talking about a huge influx, I'm sure, of responses from people that will go on for a few months.
Basically, the idea is, in fact, so we do a lot of what's called field inspections right now with some of our staff right now. We're actually going to pull that back for, in essence, the first 6 months, because we expect the phone calls to go way up, during basically that 6-month period. And especially, I would say during the first couple of years, we're anticipating, the priority focus being addressing those calls, because there's going to be a lot of questions. We're going to be doing a lot of outreach to the customers in advance with letters, kind of describing it, but we still expect a lot of phone calls.
And then there's going to be blank statements reinforcing the message regarding the tax roll that then continue to go out. So the billing is not going to stop, because we're going to keep sending statements all the way until that October time period. And to go with that June bill, where it's just a 1 month, they're getting a special insert with their bill that explains why it's only half the amount or 1 month. And again, another reminder that we're moving to the tax roll.
Yeah, it sounds great. Like you're really prepared for it. Those great answers. Thank you.
And we can certainly identify all those steps so you all know that. Because I think that's something that happened last year is how, did you have any meetings? Yeah, we had 10 of them. Did you send anything out? Yes, we sent out 4 times to everyone. So just to understand the magnitude of outreach that we're talking about, we will certainly get that out to you. Yeah. I'll also point out, when we changed the name and the bills were MRWPC and they came Monterey One Water, we did a fair amount of outreach, and there was still a number of questions like, who is this? Why are we paying them now? So there's going to be some aches and pains as we go through this.
Vice Chair Williamson, followed by Director Carbone and Director Garcia Arizona.
Yeah, no, the only thing I was going to add is I appreciate the conversation, and I think that there's some helpful feedback in regards to the way that the questions are being directed. I'm hoping that because there are a lot of questions, and I think we can continue poking at this and trying to fine tune it. And I think that the objective tonight is deciding whether or not it's something that we want to move forward with. So without getting too deep into the weeds, I'm wondering if we can take it out to the public soon here and then look at if this is something that we want to move forward in. And then I think one thing that might be helpful as we're trying to help with the communication piece of this is maybe we come up with the FAQs that's available for folks. So that way, some of these questions that we're asking maybe haven't been asked yet can be included in there, and we can make sure that that information is available to folks.
Thank you. Director Carbone, do you want us to go to the public and wait, or do you want to go ahead and comment right now?
Mine was going to be really quick. So it was just that as we talk about outreach and paper trails and all that, for the property owners, they will also receive some kind of paperwork, so because that is a tax write-off for property owners, sewer bills. So that'll be, of course, that should come.
Well, okay, so yeah, I want to clarify that point because that's a very, I do want to clarify it. So when you get your property tax statement, there's two sections of your statement. There's one for taxes and there's one for fees. So ours is actually going to be on the fees portion of it. So like if you're an individual yourself and you just own your own property, it's not a rental, that's not the fees part is not deductible for, tax purposes, but, you'd have to check with your tax attorney. I imagine if it's a rental property, that would be just part of your rental expense, the cost you're incurring for your rental, basically, so if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I'm referring to rental properties.
Okay, yeah.
Property.
And in addition, moving forward, part of our outreach plan includes an annual letter to every customer, letting them know. So in addition to the publishing of the rate report and hosting the public hearing, we will have an annual notice, maybe each July, go out to customers listing their monthly rate. It's also a double check for those rental properties, but also for those commercial properties, because we'll itemize how we've categorized all the different activities happening at their parcel. So it's another double check.
Dr. Garcia-Arizona.
Just very quick. I'm wondering if there's a possibility that we can create a separate section on the website as well that details, Director Williamson mentioned, FAQs or any type of timeline for the community to make sure that they know what's going on, but also a robust social media outreach that we need to do and strong partnerships with our city councils and city agencies as well. That makes a huge difference because I do know that you mentioned an outreach plan, but I want to hear more of the boots on the ground type of stuff. And that's what I would.
Absolutely.
Website check. We have that. It's on there. We link to it from the homepage, and it's also under the customer section under support. And we do have an FAQs, but we will update it to reflect the dialogue tonight. And then in terms of social media, yes, we're kind of waiting to figure out what was happening with that opt-out because it's a little hard.
Yeah.
These are complex topics, right? There's a lot of different layers. There's a lot of different constituent groups. So we were kind of waiting for that opt-out option to be determined to understand if that was a layer of complexity we had to build into the messaging.
And is the website, sorry to cut you off, is the website both English and Spanish?
Yes, our website is available in, I think it's like 63 languages. So yes.
Okay.
It is. And then we will also follow up with each. We do a member entity toolkit typically as part of any kind of campaign. And so we'll provide graphics and sample text that can be pushed. And something I think we're going to try to add also into our campaigns is including all of you. So if any of you are social media users, sharing the information we put out there actually can sometimes be more effective.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Director Coletti.
One very short question, Chair. Thank you for your indulgence. The question of 2% of our ratepayers not being landlords, what's the balance between residential properties and commercials? My guess would be most of that's commercial, but no, it's residential.
Yeah.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
Actually, we can give you a percentage here, can't we, Rachel?
Very good.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
That might be a follow-up item. I don't know if we had it right at the tip.
Well, residential.
Yeah. So
Did you have it,
So
Rachel?
nine.
I do.
Before?
Oh, I was going to let him go. Oh, I thought he was calculating.
I am.
I thought the engineer was going to calculate.
Of course he is.
I have it open. I'll check. your work.
About 87% residential 13% non-residential
That
ballpark.
2%.
No, of the 2%. No.
Yeah. So of the 2% that are paying as tenants instead of the as landlords,
2% is residential
Is
only.
residential.
In terms of non-residential, it's 5% of the non-residential parcels. So we average actually at 3%. By all parcels.
There's numbers we can give you.
We can give you more numbers if you like.
Yes.
All right, we're going to go out to the public here in just a moment, but I might suggest here is the Monterey One Water homepage. And without my glasses, given my crappy vision, I can still read Cooperative Water Solutions, but I cannot read
The top.
change the billing process effective July 1st. So maybe as we go into this process, we can think about changing its location. et cetera.
Really exciting. Effective July 1, we're also launching a new website or a redesigned website, which
okay.
actually my number one request on the new website was to change that. So we will have new call out buttons with larger
You're
font.
Thinking ahead of your board members. Thank you very
It'll
much.
actually look like a modern website, to be honest.
Yes.
Director
Really
Garcia
excited
Arzal.
for that.
I just have one suggestion on that. Maybe doing a pop-up as you go on the website.
Yes.
So it could just be the first thing that you see when you enter the website.
Yeah,
All right,
we can definitely
let's
explore that.
go out and hear from the public. Anyone in the room wishing to comment?
Still your thunder.
Anyone out there in Zoom land? Raise your Zoom hand. And seeing none. All right, folks, I think it's probably time for some sort of chair. Yes.
I'll move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Director Rocha.
I was just going to add that it would be really helpful to bring in the Easy Smart Pay option that is available for people to move to a monthly bill instead to ease concerns regarding the jump in cost associated with the transition to being on the tax roll.
Yeah.
Other than that, I appreciate all the work you're doing and I support strongly the expansion of the customer assistance program. So thank you.
That's good suggestion, Director Rocha, and I'm sure they can figure out how to hyperlink straight to Easy Smart Pay of the county. All right, ready for a vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Shows unanimous.
Thank you.
Staff, go forth and tear your hair out doing good work. All right, thank you. We go to informational items. Our illustrious leader of Pure Water Monterey.
Yes, so for the current water making operations in another week, we'll be at 14,000 acre feet delivered. It's roughly 4,560,000,000 gallons of drinking water delivered. Let's try to put up my slides. So we're actually moving some dirt around. So we thought we'd start with some slides, but maybe with some new directors on board, it might help to provide a brief overview of what's part of expansion. So we've actually got two different construction packages. Work we're doing at AWPF, Advanced Water Purification Facility, and then out at the injection wells, phase 4. But as a reminder, the goal is we're adding 2,250 acre feet per year to the current 3,500 acre feet per year that we've been producing. In fact, March 13th is our four-year anniversary. And in the 3 continuous years that we've had, July 1st to June 30th is our water making accounting period. We've met that 3,500 acre feet goal for the 3 years, but we're approaching our 4th year anniversary. So again, we have to be able to make more water, and then we have to deliver and inject into the aquifer more water. So let's look real quickly at what action is out there. Chai, if I could have the next slide. So this is the $15 million rule of the existing system. So this is AWPF. Within the membrane building, that's where most of the action is going to be. So this contractor, next slide, please. This contractor is going to be dropping in pieces of equipment in slots that have been set aside for new pumps. Next slide, please. new pieces of process equipment. So this is a bird's eye view or plan view of the inside of that membrane building. We're adding new membrane filtration, new reverse osmosis membrane, and new UV ultraviolet disinfection equipment. So I can't really show you any action yet, because this contractor's got about $12 million worth of equipment, treatment, process equipment, electric equipment on order, hasn't been delivered yet. This contractor got their notice to proceed in August. Last slide, please. So again, this is one of those slots for one of our process piece of equipment. It's going to be 4 or 5 months before I can show you any real action inside the building. And then last but not least, one more slide, please. This is the pump station that pumps the purified recycled water all the way to the injection field. So from Marina, where our regional treatment plant is, to the injection well field up on the hill. Okay, so we are having some noticeable action here. Again, to orient yourself, you haven't been up there. These are the 2 golf courses within Fort Ord, the Black Course and Bayonet golf courses. The lines in blue, the dark blue, that's existing facilities. All right. Part of these facilities are operated by Marina Coast Water District. Their tank farm up on the hill, we have a 2 million gallon reservoir. And then the line itself coming down General Jim Moore feeds our existing 4 deep wells. And so that's what's been producing that water for approximately 4 years. So injection well phase 4, the next element is 2 new deep wells. And then a bunch of piping to connect the distribution system, the conveyance system that hydraulically creates a loop so we can feed water to do 6 wells altogether from 2 different directions. We need to do that for peak flows. And interestingly enough, we've got a component of piping that actually goes through one of the little hills out there. And I've got a photo, you can see the hill. That includes what's called the horizontal directionally drilled pipe insulation, where they actually drill, they pull the pipe through the hill as they're drilling the hole for that pipe. Okay, in fact, this is one of the first things they'll be doing, is that we'll see what the earthwork looks like up here for our percolation basin. But to conduct the drilling of these 2 new wells, they have to be able to send water up here to help the drilling process. So they're going to start this HDD pipeline segment right now. So that's the first step. Next slide, please.
Oh, which is HDD is?
Horizontal directionally drilled. Next slide. So again, this is the earthwork around the new well sites. Also the percolation pond I mentioned. And what the percolation pond is that every week they backwash the wells. Not that they're cleaning the wells per se, but they make sure the water goes back and forth in that injection part of the aquifer so that the water continues to go into the aquifer. And these percolation ponds is where that backwash water comes out. It still ends up back in the aquifer, but it percolates down through the ground. Next slide. Okay, now this is maybe the best slide to look at from a perspective. We're looking roughly northwest. This is the hill we're going to be drilling our pipe through. This is roughly the percolation pond layout. It's about 2.4 acres percolation pond. We're going to have 2 new wells up there. Each well site, once they're completed and fenced in, is only about 1/4 of an acre. So ultimately, all of this land will be re-landscaped, the ponds themselves, and you can see one of our existing perk ponds right down by General Jim Moore. Okay, that's closer to the Seaside Middle School. It actually just looks like a little pond. Sometimes it's dry, sometimes there's a foot or so of water in it. So even though this street, Eucalyptus, is currently fenced off, a lot of people ride their bikes and walk their dogs up here, but no one really goes by here. But eventually, the city of Seaside will develop this part of Fort Ord. And all these facilities will naturally blend into that master plan of theirs. So again, little more than a week old. But that's the most exciting construction photo we have for you. So with that, I'd maybe open up to some questions. But everyone's on schedule. We still plan to be completely started up by the end of 2025.
Any questions? Vice Chair Williamson.
So if I were to look at the Gantt chart, it looks like we started construction early because according to the Gantt chart, it shows March 4th
Which package are you looking at?
tonight. Oh, am I looking at tonight's?
You are. He means which part of the construction?
Oh, I
The
guess
injection wells
that's a
versus
fair
the.
point. That's a fair point. Okay, so do we feel like we're within the time frame of starting the construction for March 4th for the expansion of the facility?
Yes.
Okay.
And again, right now, the critical path, the part of the construction process that we're most focused on is the equipment procurement.
Sure.
So certain pieces of equipment can take 12, 14, 16 months to be delivered. And it's actually the electrical equipment. It's not the treatment process equipment. It's the electrical switchgear that takes the longest to be delivered.
What are we seeing in regards to the procurement timeframes? Like do we anticipate them staying pretty much where we're at, or because we knew that was a problem during the pandemic?
Yeah.
How are we feeling about that overall?
Well, in the industry in general, you could say the supply chain has almost completely unraveled itself. But we're still seeing 4 to 6 extra months that you wouldn't have seen on the same piece of equipment order 3 to 5 years ago. So pre-COVID, if you will.
Okay.
But every piece of equipment that could impact our critical path has now been ordered. In fact, the first contractor that's ordering all that process equipment, he had to put down almost 20% of that value of that equipment. So of that $12 million worth of hardware that he bought, he had to front, as part of his prime contractor role, he had to front 20% of that because we don't pay him until that equipment arrives on site. We could have our hands on it.
So that extra time, Tyler, has been baked into the schedule.
Perfect. Yeah.
And Dave has been following up on that with the contractors and our project managers just to see, are things changing or not?
Sure. Okay, perfect. And then a final question here is, so just for orienting everybody, it looks like substantial completion of the expansion advanced water purification facility is May 4th of 2025, and substantial completion of first injection for the injection well phase 4 is August 25th.
Yeah.
Given that we have 4 wells already, what does it look like for us to be able to inject more earlier?
So the 2 contracts are moving in parallel. So when we start up the expanded AWPF, all those new pieces of equipment will be exercised to the extent that they can for the available water. So when we start up in May is not when we have a lot of extra water.
We don't have water.
That's a good point.
That's when the CSIP demands are starting to peak, and Tammy and Jose have to balance all the other demands. And so the full 7.6 peaking capacity for the new AWPF and the new wells won't really be until that next rainy season.
Sure.
And that's why the startup in May for AWPF and then late August for the new injection wells kind of dovetails. And they got kind of out of sync. If you remember, we had to rebid the injection wells because of some issues with the first round of bids.
And we really can't, per what Dave said in terms of the CSIP demands, we really can't start hitting that thing hard probably until October, November through now. So that's when the test out period will truly be happening.
I mean, we are going through climate change, it's a real thing. So who knows, we might get like a tsunami in the middle of summer next, who knows?
That's how the system's designed. So, really the Seaside Basin is a large reservoir. M1W doesn't have to produce the same amount of water to put into that reservoir every single month. You could put more in some months less in other months, depending on the source water availability and the demands of the other customers.
Okay.
Yeah, and the whole thing has been designed as a peaking plant. So it's anticipated that we absolutely will put more water in the ground in, let's say October through March-ish, April timeframe, absent a tsunami, of course.
So I'd like to add that keep in mind that the 7.6, we have a 5 MGD plant right now that we're not running at. I mean, we run at 5 MGD when we can, but we're averaging more like 3.9, 4.0. So you're not going to see the 7.6. You did have a good question. Our wells are determined, let's say for whatever reason, 5 and 6 are delayed. Can we provide more water injection if we have it available in the other 4 wells? Well, we work with Todd Groundwater, who basically give us the upper limit of what we can inject in each of the wells. So that's dependent on what the well can inject.
Mhm. Okay, thank you. Those were all helpful. Thank you. That's it for me.
Any other directors?
Real quick.
Director Adams.
In your drawing, you showed the loop coming off of the
Can you give me my injectable phase 4 picture back, please?
Yeah. The pipeline.
He's the hidden ringer with the operator.
Not an operator, never was. I'll preface, they wouldn't have me next door. That's not the picture. Anyway, just a simple question is if that loop is completed and the 2 new injection wells are in place, ready to rock and roll, theoretically, you could direct water and test them using the existing flow coming from the AWPF. Instead of sending it down 3 and 4, you'd send it down 5 and 6.
That's all valid. You can go
So
different
that
ways.
would all be theoretically proven, tested, ready to rock and roll when AWPF 2.0 starts up.
Correct.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and the beauty of the hydraulics coming in from
Yeah.
the reservoir is then we didn't have to build a little booster pump right here.
Gotcha.
Because again, elevation wise, this is the low point.
Right.
And interestingly enough, this elevation up at their tank farm is roughly equal to where we stand right here. You look right over at the reservoir. So it works out beautifully. And if you know typical drinking water distribution systems, they like lots of loops.
Yeah.
So you get water from multiple directions as pressures fluctuate.
Especially high risk areas like hospitals, et cetera, and certainly our water system, we'd certainly want the loop. So this is great that this is happening.
Loops also allow you to maintain service to lots of areas while you have to shut down some section of the pipe.
So we promised much more interesting photographs, and it's going to be simpler than transitioning the wastewater fees to the county tax.
Absolutely.
Nice ender. That's a nice closer.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lindau.
Hey, facts are facts. I mean,
Thank you. All right, let's move on. If there are no other questions, we'll move on to staff reports.
That was good. That was good.
Mr. Shield.
Thank you, Chair Moore. So I wanted to introduce Frank Rich, who has been patiently sitting back here. He is our new Director of Information Systems. Today is actually his first day. And hopefully he comes back tomorrow after all this. So he comes to us from Southern California. He was with the San Bernardino Water Company, and before that, the city of Victorville. Comes with 20 plus years of IT experience, and we're certainly looking forward to him getting in and helping us, like everything we've talked about between cybersecurity, our IT networks, as well as SCADA and everything surrounding it. I did not realize until today, unfortunately, and an offer was already extended to him, that he is a Kansas City Chiefs fan. So, Frank, I don't know if you want to say anything or if you... No, no one does. Oh. So congratulations to
Welcome.
Frank and welcome aboard. And I also wanted to bring up a couple things. One is this week we are hosting the Castro Valley Sanitary District Leadership Team. They do a little offsite retreat periodically. They were here actually in 2017, I believe. So they come back again. They would let them use our facilities, they take a tour. It's just nice to have that sort of connection with another entity up in the Bay Area. Next month, you should be receiving an update on our renewable energy project with Regen Monterey. We have received our final draft reports, so things are coming together. As you know, on the ad hoc committee, you will see that more coming up, but that is a significant milestone in terms of moving off of the planning, hopefully into some sort of decision on design and what projects to pursue. And then lastly, on March 15th, I'm actually going to go speak with the Salinas Valley Water Coalition. Had a great meeting with Ara Azarian with Monterey County Water Resources Agency, Christopher Bunn and Nancy Isaacson, just to talk about source waters and some of the requests that they have made. Going to go to the coalition and do the same PowerPoint, if you will, on source waters, CSIP, Pure Water Monterey, and answer any questions they may have. With that, any other?
I just want to be real quick. So maintenance, we finished the liner for the SVRP pond actually ahead of schedule. So the $1 million project, we came in at $885,000. It's done. I've talked to Jose today and we're already filling some of the filters just in case the demand. I know that there might be some more water rain the next weekend, but just in case, we're going to be ready. So our maintenance got the winter maintenance done, engineering got the pond liner. So real happy with everybody there. And I know it's late, so I won't continue and say how great my team is. So go ahead.
Mike?
All right. It's a couple things real quick. We had a tour for a Stanford professor that's out here on sabbatical. And we also had some of our elected staff attend, Senator Laird's staff, as well as Senator Assemblywoman Addis' staff was there. It was a good time. On Thursday, we're going to have high school from Salinas come over to our facilities. It's part of a excuse me, grant requirement. So we're looking forward to that. I'm building up here, so the crescendo is coming. We had a board meeting tour for Mr. Roca last week as well. And then a couple good things. So we had a new sign placed out at the RTP as you make the turn to go into the treatment facility. You'll see a brand new sign. Staff from the treatment plant did a great job in helping us cite that. And then finally, last Thursday, we got a grant agreement from the state that confirmed our $15 million for expansion. So that was 26 months in the making. And Mr. Shudo tells me that I have to start a new month to find more money. So at least I have February covered.
Yeah, he's good for 3 days. So that's, you know, $15 million. So that brings the total for expansion to $42 million of that $77 million project. So that's just a testament to the legislative outreach and everything that Mike and crew have been doing. Nothing else?
No other staff reports. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Chai,
I just have a couple and I can't top that. Mine are just not as exciting, but Form 700s are due by April 1st. I've already received some of yours. Just a reminder that you can file yours with your council. If you're e-filing, just add our name to that, and that'll check off that requirement. As many of you know, we've been wanting to schedule a strategic planning workshop with you. It's a 4-hour workshop. We've narrowed out some dates in the month of April. So I'll be sending out an email tomorrow with a doodle poll. And as soon as everyone replies, then we can confirm the date. And lastly, I still am missing a few board member committee preferences surveys. I received some. Chair Moore will be making those committee assignments that'll go into the board packet in March. So I want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to serve on a committee. Okay, and I'll email those tomorrow. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Chai. All right, we move on then, if there are no other staff reports, to board member comments and reports. Director Rocha.
I just want to thank you, Paul, and your staff for the tour of your treatment facility. It was very informational. I appreciated the opportunity to learn about all the work that you do. And thank you to the board for the first board meeting. Appreciate it.
Well, welcome, and we appreciate your comments. We move on then to agenda item 16, public comments on closed session items. Anyone wishing to address the board on matters appearing on closed session may do so at this time. Please limit your comment to 3 minutes or less. Anyone in Zoom land wishing to comment? See no one in the room. All right, would you like a 8-minute break while we get into closed session?
Let's just do it.
All right, just do it. Okay.
All in favor, say aye.
All right, well then, quickly.
Spike at the treatment plant in about 10 minutes.
Oh, hey,
Oh, yeah.
Hey,
So you're
one
going to
other
lead
thing.
us? Thank you very much. It is 9:33. We're out of closed session, and I will turn it over to Mr. Gilpin to make any announcements out of closed session.
Thank you, Chair Moore. On the litigation item, the board on a unanimous vote has authorized counsel to initiate litigation. The facts and circumstances were not known to the defendant at this time and won't be disclosed, but will be formally available once the litigation is initiated.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gilpin. And our next board meeting is going to be March 25th. And we now stand adjourned. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.